What's of what it looks like here? It's this is a pulse to that, and just use it with Zoom. So the simple and easy way to do this is to basically guys to do. So for example, and now you are sharing this video clip. Now Zoom, let me just turn that part off.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the South African Jewish Report, a big welcome to everyone watching us this evening. We've got a really fascinating evening ahead of us tonight. We're going to be looking at tax structures and legal ways for you not to pay tax. But of course, one of the things they did or didn't do with our tax today was turn off our electricity in most of the northern suburbs of Johannesburg. So welcome to everyone, and please, if you're with us, please turn on your cameras. Let's have an informal chat as the audience joins us. I see we've already got about 72 people logged in, about 160 people already, and we're 15 minutes to go until we begin. So Peter, is it Peter or Peter?
Peter, like the boy.
Peter, were you in the dark today?
No, I live in Cape Town. So
okay. So you're lucky from many, many respects.
Yeah, we're not getting the rain. We're not getting the wind at the moment. We've got electricity. So just can't, drink or go to the beach.
Those of us further north have no idea what you're talking about. Electricity, beach, good weather. It's been raining in Johannesburg. It's been miserable. Gadi, you're the person who goes and sits on the beach most of all and waves your toes to the audience on Instagram. You couldn't really do that much this year.
Yeah, I got cut off at the feet on about the 28th of December. So it did put a dent in the Instagram posting.
But you did get some holiday in.
No, we did. We got a good 10 days in before they closed the beaches. So we did take full advantage. And then it was reduced to promenade walks, fully masked.
Okay, well, worse things have happened. Leo is another one who's been sitting in Cape Town staring at the mountain, but probably not the beaches, Leo.
Not the beaches, but as you know, Howie, I prefer the mountain to the beach. So it hasn't been too traumatic for me. I still spend lots of time on the mountain.
Are you taking the dog for runs on the mountain?
Shame, the dog's injured at the moment. So another week before she's allowed to get back on the mountain, but she'll be back on next Thursday.
Was it a running injury?
Potentially, and like a small surgery that she had to have, but she's fine. She'll be good as new on Thursday.
Fantastic. Pavlo, a big welcome to you. No one knows what you look like. We know your voice from 702, obviously from the business show on 702, but I don't think anyone's ever actually seen you in person before.
Because I have a face for radio.
A big welcome. You're one of our new funds we're going to be talking about tonight. Tell us what your fund is called.
It's Aria Capital, Howie, and it's an SME, a general SME focused fund.
And is it going to include some of the people that you've had on some of your radio shows as investments?
I don't know, actually. I was counting with Bruce at the beginning of this year. We've actually profiled over 600 businesses. Can you believe it?
That's truly remarkable.
Not all of them. And the thing that I am very, very, very proud to say is every single profile has been different because everyone has a unique story, don't they?
Do you think South Africans compete with the rest of the world when it comes to entrepreneurship? Or do you think we kind of lag behind a little in our level of creativity?
No, I think it's a very different environment. So look, I've got real privilege in that we've got clients in the US, in the UK, 2 in Hong Kong, some in Singapore, a couple in Europe, and then obviously South Africa. And what's been so interesting is that at the more or less March last year, I had to make a presentation to about 60 SMEs in the UK. So businesses doing between 1 and 30 million pounds a year of annual revenue. And I was talking to these SMEs, and the next minute someone said to me, so look, what are your thoughts on furlough? How do we work with furlough? And I got the fright to my life. And very quickly, very quietly on the other screen, thank heavens it was on Zoom, I typed in furlough and discovered that in the UK, business owners were asked to send their staff home, and government would pay £2,500 a month to their staff, but their staff couldn't work. And the social net is so deep and so profound and so supportive that it seems to take an edge away from the way they see business and how they build business. And I've been left absolutely convinced that some of the best business owner, entrepreneurial business owners I've ever witnessed in my life and worked with are South African, because out of necessity, we don't have a choice to sit back.
Yeah, and if we do sit back, we land up in Sassa queues, and the minister makes sure that we are shot at with water cannons.
Completely right. Completely right. Necessity. I think necessity is absolutely awesome. The one big difference that I do notice, not in the US, but in the UK, is that businesses there are digitally ahead of us, but they aren't digitally ahead of in Singapore and Hong Kong. So we've done a lot of catch up this last year. The amount of digital adoption that I've seen across businesses in South Africa in the last 12 months has been quite profound. Huh?
Amazing. Great to hear. We're going to hear more about your fund. In fact, you're going to be the first one up after 8 o'clock. But Jeffrey Solomon, it looks like you're going to bed. You have such comfortable looking furniture behind you. Should we be worried that you're going to go to sleep as other people talk?
Sorry, you just woke me. But by the way, my name's spelled wrongly. Maybe someone can correct it before the show starts.
You can go onto the little block at the corner right of your screen if you mouse over it, and you can change your own name.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
What did we spell wrong?
There's one E too many here. Rename. Okay, so I'll.
A lot of people at raves have said this exact same thing. There's one E too many.
Exactly.
Dino, you're not supposed to smile at jokes like that. It's supposed to go directly over your head.
Good evening, Mr. Saxteen. How are you?
Well, you can see I'm taking tonight very seriously. I've even put on a collared shirt. I wasn't sure I still had collared shirts in the cupboard. I haven't worn them in about 10 and a half months now.
I can assure you, you've got boxer shorts on where we can't see, though.
Or maybe nothing at all. It's one of those things.
Evening.
Hi, Cliff. Welcome to you too. You have one of the most creative and interesting funds you're going to be telling us about this evening. You're going to be talking about cannabis. Will we be arrested for talking to you this evening?
Definitely not, but you're going to have a lot of fun.
Okay. Are you supplying samples to everyone else on the panel?
This is the problem with webinars, but otherwise I'd love to.
Welcome. Lovely to have you join us as well. John T. Sachs, it looks like you have your own greenhouse next to you.
I do. I'm trying to, fit in with the African theme of plants and nature. And, if someone asks me, is it an eco-friendly fund, I point to the trees.
Don't smoke it, Jonty. Don't smoke it.
Is it made out of plastic or is it real, Jonty? We know you come from a farming family. So there is one question that everyone has in mind to people who come from farming families. Are you going to be supplying us all with ivermectin?
Well, we had this discussion the other day, Howie, and it is possible. And I do have connections. We've got a few cows and they need a lot of it. So, we've got liters and liters of it.
So, Jeff, tell us, tonight we're going to be talking about tax. Is it inappropriate in a country as relatively poor as South Africa, where we're scrounging around for the last cent in order to pay for vaccines? Is it inappropriate that we should be talking about paying as little tax as possible, albeit that it is completely legal?
So I think that they're two completely unrelated matters. I think, tax has a short, medium, and a long-term benefit. And I think, investing in a Section 12J has exactly that, short, medium, and long-term benefits for the benefit of the country. And in the UK, where Section 12J has taken its lead from, is that in the initial stages, there was some tax leakage, but now that it's a mature business, they're actually a tax positive industry, the VCT industry, which is billion-pound industry. It's, South African 10 billion of investment to date is minuscule to what's happening in the UK.
But it's also about job creation, is it not? Do we have any sense or any idea of how many jobs have been created by the 12J industry?
Well, listen, the 12J industry through the 12J Association of South Africa has done a survey, and it looks like, we've obviously surveyed all the various fund managers. About 10,500 jobs have been created today. But that's only the tip of the iceberg. I think what the most interesting part is that the job cost per job creation is about 35,000 Rand per job, which is the lowest job creation project that government could ever imagine. But not only so, the cost per job is very, very low, but not only are you doing that, you're actually creating tax compliant companies that will go into the future paying their taxes, whether it's VAT, whether it's income tax, dividends tax, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it just feeds into itself.
Cool. So Malcolm, can we just suggest that you, number one, flip your phone around so we see you in landscape mode rather than in portrait mode? And if we can put the camera directly in line with your face, although you have a very lovely torso, it's mainly your face that we want to see this evening.
Okay, thanks for that, Howie.
Fantastic. Let the camera and your eyes be on eye level with each other. And while Malcolm does that, Avi Gordon, welcome.
How's it, Howie? Thanks.
Nice to see you. You're looking a little dark. I don't know if that's personality or light in your home. So if there's any way we can get some light on your face, then at least we can actually see you a little. We don't like light behind you. We like light in front of you, because that then at least lights you up and we can actually see what you look like and maybe even hear what you have to say.
Okay, let me run around a little bit, find a nice spot. I can't find a nice spot in my soul, but I'll try to find one for my face. So just
and while we're talking about that and electricity and light, Adrian, given the fact that we were in darkness in most of Johannesburg for a good, 4 or 5 hours today, your company must be actually in a great position because everyone needs alternative energy.
Yeah, so we integrate battery solutions into what we offer for our clients. So earlier today, some of our complexes were actually running off of battery power. So if it wasn't for our solution, they would have been in the dark. Literally.
That's amazing. So you can get a tax advantage and have electricity. It's almost like living in Cape Town.
Not quite. We still have rain.
Okay, Cloud Footco. You have made some amazing investments, and you're truly at kind of the cutting edge of technology startups in South Africa. What's your sense of South Africa and startups generally?
Yeah, I think I think it's we've probably evaluated about 2,000 companies and we've made 8 investments. So I must be honest with you, I think I've worked in Silicon Valley, I've worked in Israel, I've worked all over the world building tech businesses, and I see the same level of innovation here as I've seen around the world. What we, however, we don't have the amount of capital that they have in these other parts of these entrepreneurial tech ecosystems. Where you put in a $10 million check, you're writing out a 10 million Rand check. That's the comparison. So what you're really finding is anything that's really capital very, very intensive and requires a lot of working capital, you don't find much innovation in South Africa. But bar that, the type of tech companies we invest in, which are very capital efficient, and we can take them global, build it once and you set it forever. It's unbelievable, the innovation that we're seeing. It's just mind-blowing. And I'll tell you, I've seen the same. I'm on the calls every day with the Bay, with other parts of the world, and we're doing just what they're doing around the globe. We just need more capital. That's why the Section 12J is so important, that we get more capital into this asset class.
So you've looked at 2,000 investments. You've only made 8. Does that mean 1,992 were uninvestable, or you didn't have enough capital in your fund to invest in them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I must be honest, investable, great business does not mean investable business. So what we look for in a venture capital-backed tech business is a 10x return on our capital. So unless we see a minimum 10 times, I put in $1 million, I want to see 10 million back in 5 to 7 years. So we see probably 1,000 of those have been great businesses. They're just not venture capital investable businesses because they were different types of businesses, but not the tech enabled, had real scale. They could take them around the globe. So probably a good 1,000 nice businesses, but just not venture capital investable businesses. So we only invest in, and I won't go through my criteria, but the team and the technology and the large market, et cetera, but we want to make sure that we can see a 10 times return on our capital, else we don't invest. So most of those have actually been, not those, but probably half of those have fallen into that category. The other half are the other half that you described.
But 10 times investment means high risk, high return.
100%.
of any 10 investments, how many would you expect to shoot the lights out? How many would you expect to fail?
You know, when I worked in the Bay Area, they had this great analogy there, which is a baseball analogy, which is 262. So in 10 investments, you get 2 home runs, you make a 10 or 100x return on your capital. You get 6, you get first base, second base, or third base, you make a 1-time return, 2-time return, 3-time return, and you get 2 strikeouts. So if you can achieve that, you're actually doing very well. We don't look for 262 in South Africa. We're looking for rather, 8 and 2, 8 wins and maybe 2 strikeouts, or at least get to first or second or third base. But as you said, this is high risk, high return. We look at a 30 to 38% internal rate of return to our shareholders, but that is risky. There's no guarantees. But for any investor that's got that appetite for risk, we're the type of, we've got the right talent and people, and we've got the right, and you need to have the right appetite for that risk.
Great. Well, to everyone, a huge welcome to you, and to everyone watching us around the world. Fantastic to have you with us again. We were actually very worried. We thought, how many people out there would in fact be interested in tax? And we have 2 things to say to all the people watching. You will be judged by, number 1, the returns you'll make for your investors. Number 2, by how entertaining your presentation is. If you cannot entertain the literally thousands and thousands of people who will be watching you this evening, then you would have failed in your task tonight. So return on investment, entertainment, and clarity of what people are actually investing in. Those are our 3 requirements to all the people who are going to be presenting this evening. With that, I'm going to ask you all, please, to turn off your cameras, turn off your microphones. We'll be back with you one at a time. But first of all, on behalf of the South African Jewish Report, I want to welcome you to the 71st webinar that we've done since lockdown began. It's hard to believe. I think we're now on approximately 305 days since lockdown began. And I hope you've all seen this week's edition of the South African Jewish Report newspaper. That's what it looks like if you haven't actually seen it. It is another remarkable edition. You can either go online and pick it up on www.sajr.co.za, or you can go to your local supermarket, hypermarket, Checkers, Pick and Pay, exclusive books, pick up a copy. Amazing story on the front cover this week. And that's the story of, in fact, Ronnie Hockman, the anesthetist, who should have been on the helicopter, the Netcare helicopter that tragically crashed and lost the lives of 5 Netcare healthcare professionals this week. It's an amazing, touching, and moving story about survivor's guilt, and I certainly recommend that you pick up a copy. Also on the front page of the newspaper, you may remember that last week we did a webinar on getting healthcare providers their vaccines, or making sure we would all nab the jab, as we called it. And on the front page of the Jewish Report, in fact, we're saying to healthcare providers, if you haven't registered yet, please go register. We want to make sure that all of our healthcare providers are in fact inoculated. The jabs may have arrived today, or they may arrive on the 1st of February, but certainly by the 1st or 2nd week of February, we're going to get all of our healthcare workers truly vaccinated. So if you haven't registered, please go to the front page of the Jewish Report, get to the link that we've indicated there, and let's make sure that, in fact, we get all of our healthcare workers registered. We also have an amazing webinar planned for Saturday evening, and that is called COVID's Mental Marathon. So please make note, and Danny will post in the chat as well the registration link. It's bit.ly/SAJR71, because that will be our 71st webinar. And we are going to be talking about the fact that we thought this was a sprint, and as we got near the finish line, it actually turned into a marathon. And what do you mentally do when suddenly everything that you've planned for suddenly disappears? And we're going to be speaking to some amazing people. We're going to be speaking to a professor, Barry Jacobson from Charlotte Makeke Hospital, who every day puts on his PPE, dons his PPE, and goes to battle against the virus every single day. It's another relentless battle. We're going to be talking to David Frank. Dave, in fact, ran the South African base in Antarctica. And an amazing story of being alone, being isolated, knowing that if something went wrong, there was no way he could get help at all for about 10 months of the year. You cannot land a plane at the South African base in Antarctica. He's going to be telling us about how he got through that experience and showing us some truly remarkable and amazing photographs of his experience in Antarctica. And we're also going to be speaking to Maxine Hart. Maxine Hart landed up in jail in the 1980s under the apartheid regime on a number of occasions. She was in detention without trial. She was in solitary confinement, and she used to play mind games with all of her jailers. And she's going to be telling us all those stories Saturday evening in COVID's mental marathon. So please go join us. You'll see the link is in the chat. Copy it out, click on it. Please join us on Saturday evening. We're going to be starting 8:30 in the evening to make sure that the people in Cape Town, in fact, have the opportunity to join us, because Shabbat comes out at about 8:34 in Cape Town on Saturday evening. So with that, as always, let's tell you that this is not a one-way conversation. This is a two-way conversation. We'd love to hear from all of the people participating tonight. So please use the chat amongst each other, ask questions, do whatever, tell us where in the world you are. But if you have a question for any of our panelists, you'll see there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. As we go through tonight, we're going to ask you, if you have any questions, please just pop it into the Q&A section, and we're going to ask the people as they present one by one as they go along. After each category as well, we're going to be asking you if you have any interest in anyone contacting you with any of these investments. You'll just vote. Once you've voted, we'll make sure that we pass on your details, and they'll send you more information about the investments they're talking about. So with that, Jeff Miller, please turn on your camera. Come join me. Let's have a conversation here.
How are you, Howie?
Good, thank you. Pavla, I'm going to ask you to turn off your camera for a second. So it's just Jeff and myself on the screen. Jeff, Section 12J, you're one of the great pioneers in South Africa. What is this?
Howie, that's pioneers we are. Section 12J is a piece of legislation that came out in the Income Tax Act in 2009. It is 12 years old. There's a sunset clause in June 2021, which is this year, which is where it's going to be revisited, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But when we started, we were the first operational Section 12J. There were no others. No one even knew what Section 12 is or was. Fast forward today, there's close to 200 Section 12Js. There's about 10 billion Rand invested in this asset class. And it's become a whole industry has developed around Section 12J. And it started off as a very immature piece of legislation and has developed to where it is today. Grovest, was very instrumental in lobbying Treasury and SARS, and sat on the Davis Tax Commission and assisted in getting where Section 12 is today. And we're very proud that today it is where it is, and please God, it will be extended, and we look forward to its longevity.
So let's just talk about the concept. The concept is not unique to South Africa, but government offers, in fact, certain investment incentives to make sure jobs are created in the country. And Section 12J, the way it's set up, says if you invest money here, you get a tax rebate on the money that you invest, in order that we can encourage the development of venture capital and new businesses and job creation in South Africa. So it's actually in South Africa's greatest interest. And you were saying about 10,000 jobs have been created in South Africa by this incentive scheme. And it's in fact the cheapest job creation scheme we have in South Africa.
Correct, absolutely right. So this whole incentive was made to stimulate and assist SMMEs because they couldn't get funding from traditional sources. So go to the retail market, give them a tax benefit. So there's a risk-adjusted return for investing in the small SMMEs, and that means any company, you're allowed to invest in companies with assets not greater than 50 million post money, and therefore so there is some sort of risk attached to it. You say if you're paying tax at the marginal rate of tax at 45%, if you invest 1,000, the receiver would give you 45% back. So then we say that you have risk capital of 55 Rand, because you would have had to pay that 45% to SARS anyway. So therefore, you've got only risk capital of 55 at risk, but you've got 100 working for you, which gives you this risk-adjusted return to invest into these SMMEs.
So I want to just go through that really slowly with a practical example. Let us say, for example, I earn R1 million a year. SARS would generally tax me at the top rate, 45%. So I'd normally, of that R1 million, I would normally pay 450,000 approximately through to SARS. But if I take R1 million, the R1 million that I've earned, and instead of using it, I actually invest that full R1 million into a Section 12J investment, my taxable income for that year is actually zero. So I pay SARS no money at all. Now, SARS gets a bite right at the end because they're going to charge me capital gains tax on it. But ultimately, it is a legal way for you to not pay tax if you invest in an appropriate investment, and we'll talk about what an appropriate or qualifying investment is. But if you put your money into that, you will not have to pay tax on your income equal to the amount of money that you've put in. So if you earn R1 million and you put in R1 million, you're not going to pay any tax that year. If you earn R1 million and put in 500,000, you may land up paying 200,000 tax that year instead of 450,000.
Absolutely correct. And I'd like to just add on to that. So if you only earned 800,000 and you invested R1 million, you can still carry the 200,000 to the following tax year. So therefore, it gets carried forward. So in other words, you allowed individuals and trusts are allowed to invest up to R2.5 million a year. Companies are allowed to invest R5 million a year. It used to be unlimited, but about 2 years ago there was a cap on it. And so you have individuals and trusts can invest up to 2.5 and companies 5 million.
So we're talking bigger numbers here, and a lot of people don't earn 2.5 and 5 million or $1 million even. But many of the investments you can invest for as little as 70,000 Rand or 100,000 Rand, and you can put in whatever you want as long as you meet the million, and each fund has a different criteria as long as you meet the minimum amount that the fund allows you to put in. But you don't have to put in $1 million, you don't have to put in $500,000. There are options of people much, much lower than that. Is that correct?
Absolutely right. So each fund would have a mandate, and each fund would determine how much they would want to take. So there are some funds that have a minimum. There are some funds that will take 50,000 Rand as a minimum. There's some 100, 500, some $1 million, depending on what the fund's mandate is.
Now, Jeff, Grovest, our partners for this evening, who are helping to take us through on this amazing journey, and thank you for your sponsorship this evening. You're actually not one of the funds. You are a fund of fund. You're like a unit trust of other Section 12J funds. Is that correct?
Not quite right. So Grovest is a corporate finance house that actually manages and promotes Section 12Js. So in our portfolio, we have 10 promoted funds. That's where we actually sit and we have a stake in the manager. And then we manage in excess of 40 other funds where we just purely provide administrative services to Section 12Js and private equity companies. So, but Grovest itself is not a fund. There are different funds and within across the board, which Grovest may have a stake in the manager.
But also some people watching tonight will say, this is really complicated. I don't know if I should put my money with the guys from Pepper Club or from Lucid or from Sunstone or Infinity or Auric. Isn't there a unit trust I can invest in, and you select funds? And that's one of the people we'll be presenting tonight. Is that right? Meta Capital.
Yes, Meta Capital is a unique fund. As far as I'm aware, it's the only one of its class. Where by investing into Meta, there's a portfolio that's selected on an annual basis by an independent investment committee that would look at the whole universe of 200 Section 12Js and look at the various teams, the risk profiles, the returns, the historical track record, and therefore an investor who will invest into a fund of funds, i.e. Meta, would therefore have a diversified portfolio for the investment.
Perfect. So let's hear a little about Grovest. I'm going to ask Danny just to play us a little Grovest video, just so people can get a sense of exactly who Grovest is. So Danny, please won't you show us? So now, Jeff, I see in the questions as well, someone has told us about their business that they have and how does this apply to them? And I think the simple answer is, if you think you have a business that qualifies, that's a qualifying business, go speak to Grovest and see if you in fact eligible to turn your business into a 12J fund and get people to in fact invest in it. That's the bottom line.
Absolutely. The people are very welcome to contact me on my email address, jeffm@grovest.co.za. And I'm happy to engage with them.
Now, before we get on to actually talking to the different funds tonight, I want to also say there's some drawbacks, because just like everything, not everything is positive. We understand there's an enormous tax incentive of us to put our money into funds like the Section 12J funds, but there are a few things that people need to know. And drawback number one is you're investing for 5 years. This isn't a liquid asset. If you take your money out before 5 years, the receiver is going to go and tax you at your marginal rate on the money that you, as if you had not put it in the first place. Is that correct, Jeff?
Absolutely right. So it is 5 years. For getting the tax benefit, you must invest for a minimum of 5 years. So if you invest at the 28th of February this year, you must hold for a further 5 years in order to get in order that there's no recoupment when you liquidate your shares.
The second thing that people need to know is that when you sell your shares at the end, you're taxed on the capital gain of your entire holding, not just, so if you've bought something for R1 million and it's worth $1.5 million after 5 years, you are taxed on the capital gains rate on the full $1.5 million, not just on the 500,000 Rand gain.
So that's correct, because you get if you invested $1 million, you deduct your $1 million from your taxable income. So therefore your base cost is 0. And therefore when you sell at 1.5 million, you're getting paid. If you're an individual, it would be at 18% on the 1.5 million.
But it's almost the sort of advice that we'd give to people is you have to like the underlying investment. Don't do it just for the tax incentive. Do it because you believe in the underlying investment, and the tax incentive is just a bonus that adds on in addition to incentivize you to put your money into that sort of investment.
Yeah, so the tax incentive will give you probably 7 or 8% additional return on your investment. But I think one tonight will be, they're showcasing a number of funds. And I think one needs to look at the teams. You have to look at the track record. Like one has to look at, is there asset underpin? One has to look at the mandate in which they're playing. And I think these are all the different criteria that you will have to, investors will take. So where there's an asset underpin, that there's probably a lower return than if there's no asset underpin. So it's all based on risk and return, basic investment principles. And I think we've got a great, just looking at who will be presenting tonight, I think we're getting an array of the different mandates. So I think there were, and the investors will see various risk profiles that they can choose from.
So in fact, let's start off with our first one. Let's actually ask Pablo Fatidis. People know your voice. They're now seeing your face. Everyone knows you from, in fact, 702's Money Show. We're going to be very strict with everyone, Jeff. We're giving them exactly 5 minutes, including any AV, to tell us about their product, not a moment more than 5 minutes. We're going to ask 1 or 2 questions afterwards, and then we're going to get on, because there are 14 different companies that are going to be presenting their options this evening. So forgive us to all our panelists for being rude. But Pablo, nice to see you. Great to meet you in person. And you have 5 minutes. Please tell us about the Auric Fund.
I do. Thank you very much, Howie. I'm going to put up a very small presentation just to guide a bit of the conversation. It's literally a single slide, and I'm going to call it up right now so we can get going with it. Wonderful being here. Thank you.
Remember, it's all about entertainment.
Okay, so this is all about Auric Capital. We started Auric Capital for the simple reason that after 15 years of trying very, very hard to work with banks to fund their own customers that we were working with and growing, they seemed always reluctant. I'm a firm believer that SME funding just generally, right across the world, is constantly lacking. So we started Auric Capital. It's a very unusual fund in the sense that it is entirely centered on SMEs, right across industry. We call an SME in South Africa a business doing above 15 million a year in annual revenues, up to about 300 million rands a year. It's entirely exit focused. The average age of the business owners we work with sits at 49, edging onto 50. And for anyone who's ever been involved in the wealth management industry globally, when people hit 49, there's this magical chemical reaction in them that starts getting them very orientated to, well, I better start investing and saving. In a business, that 49, 50, early 50s period is where you start migrating from an income generating model in how you've built your business into an exit focus, where you're saying, I now need to lock and load the value for a potential exit. So in many ways, what sets us apart is that we invest deeply in the psychology of the individuals we work with. We are looking for business owners that have that switch and are starting to migrate towards not only growing their business in terms of income, but also in terms of value. We have around 350 odd SMEs from which we can select and source our deal flow. The way that we originate our SMEs is through Auric Business Accelerator. There are two of them, one in Johannesburg, one in Cape Town, which offer privately business growth support and services to privately owned businesses. Those businesses go to Auric, they sign on, we customize growth plans to help them move to the next level of growth. And Auric Capital sits above the accelerators, looking for those businesses that have got a track record established behind them. The behavior of the team itself has been diagnosed and consistently shown itself to be worthy of investment. And of course, the numbers are coming through quite comfortably. So we have a very, very cost-efficient method of generating deal flow and avoiding all the due diligence costs. Because as those businesses grow, they literally press a button on their customized dashboards to say, we're looking for growth funding in order to maintain our growth rates. And that's when Auric Capital comes to life. We invest only into growth momentum. So not I want to grow, not I'm hoping to grow, not help me grow. The growth momentum needs to be there. And we're able to track and trace it through 29 points of data that we collect from every single business that we work with. And with that data, we've got a series of algorithms that forecast the growth rates, forecast the scalability and capacity of the business to maintain the growth rates. And where we can start to see the capacity is being pressed to a point where it will impede growth, we then have the ability to deliver the growth funding into it. My last point, really, we want to deploy our funding over a 6-month period of time. We're aiming at an IRR of 25% per annum. Historically, we've grown those underlying businesses at around 30% on a turnover revenue growth rate per annum.
So, Pablo, can you tell us what are the underlying assets? Give us practical examples of the sort of companies that you'd expect to find there.
So a couple. A business that is probably the leading business in spectrometry. So spectrometry is a device that uses light to look through your body, or to look through concrete, or to look through steel, or to look through plant material. And what's happened of late, in the last 5, 6, 7 years or so, legislation has enabled the entire drone industry. And along with that, this particular business, which always made spectrometers for big industry, is now looking to procure investment from us in order to manufacture smaller spectrometers that fit on drones. So it's responding to a very strong growth impulse within the drone sector. Another good example is a business that has extremely sophisticated CAD software, so computer-aided design software. And the way it's used, Howie, is this business would effectively dissect and create an X-ray of a big piece of plant and equipment. So think of a 30 million rand grader. That grader has 3 different systems to it: hydraulics, fuel systems, and oil systems. And what the software would do is it would give an X-ray map of that piece of plant and equipment. What happened in the old days, 2, 3, 4, 5 years back, big industry would be buying the software, buying the hardware, and buying in the expertise. What's happened in the low growth environment of South Africa, those big businesses are saying, we want to now outsource this. So that business is raising capital from us to turn itself from a product selling business into a services business with long-term contracts feeding into those corporates.
Jeff, one of the questions that keeps on coming up, and maybe between you and Pavlo, you can answer this, is how do you exit? How do you exit when you're investing in small businesses? What is the exit strategy to get out?
So I think that's a good question. And that's what I was actually going to ask Pablo myself, is what is the exit strategy? But when investors are looking to invest into a Section 12J, one of the very important issues they have to look at is what is the exit strategy of the business? Is it liquid? Is there a market for it? Or or you're going to have to hold on for some time. So maybe just to you, Pablo, what is the exit strategies for the investments that you're making into these various businesses? And also, what type of stakes are you actually making into these businesses?
Yes, so Jeff, we've got two different exit strategies. What I'm foreseeing occurring in South Africa in the next 3 to 5 years is I think we're going to see a massive pickup in M&A activity coming out of the corporate big business environment. And the simple reason is this: the mid-tier market that we invest in is extremely responsive to change. In fact, if I looked at the portfolio and how it performed last year, when COVID came and hit us hard, we saw the first level drop in revenues, next level drop in profitability. In the third month, around a 30% shedding of the jobs across all 300 of those businesses. As we moved into the fourth month, we saw stabilization. For us, August was the turnaround period where these businesses had adjusted sufficiently to respond to the changes in the market. What I saw across the corporate landscape is they were still struggling to get to the first phase of resetting to be relevant in this tough economy. So I'm aiming for a 3 to 5 year M&A rush in amongst big businesses and corporates looking to acquire growth and innovation. We've got our eyes set on that. The second way that we exit is typically through management buyouts and through family buyouts. We've got relationships with Standard Bank, with Nedbank, and with ABSA, where we have access to debt funding. When the time comes to exit, we typically support the raising of debt by the family itself or by the business owners themselves to acquire the equity out. The reason that we utilize that is right now, when a business is built well, typically to maintain its growth, it needs to invest in three things: marketing, technology, and people. There's no bank out there that will fund that kind of asset class, if you could call it an asset class for that matter, because it's a working capital requirement. And if you want to maintain your growth rates and capitalize on the growth opportunities out there, that's where our fund comes to life for those businesses who are quite happy to then leverage debt to claim back their equity.
Pavlo, one of the questions coming in is, are your assets local or international? But in fact, one of the requirements of 12J is 80% has to be local. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct, Howie. We have opportunity internationally, but it's the Section 12J fund is focused and determined and decided by the legislation itself. So it's entirely South African focused.
We have a quick video of Oric, which we're going to have a look at. Then we're going to move on to Colin Ventures. We're going to allow people the opportunity in a few minutes, if they would like you to contact them with more information, to give them the opportunity to in fact ask for more information from you. Pavlo, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And Danny, please show us the Oric Capital video. Thank you so much. Don't worry, we will get you all the contact information. So if you've liked what you've seen, you'll get an opportunity through a poll shortly to let us know. We'll make sure all the information does get through to you. So with that, Clive Butko, if you could turn on your camera. Now, Jeff, we're kind of in the true venture capital section of tonight. People investing in startup businesses, people investing in technology. And Clive very much fits into that category, doesn't he?
Yes, so Clive is a stalwart in technology. We go back a long way together, having started, initially it was Grovest Technologies, and then it became Calon Ventures. Clive, as he said, has been, his whole life, he was at Accenture, has been involved in technology. And I must say that in the last couple of years, they've built a fantastic business.
So Clive, welcome. Tell us about Calon. I believe you or Danny are going to share your screen as well and take us through a little bit of an example of what you're investing in.
Yeah, thanks. I'm relying on you giving me the screen. So thank you very much. And it sounds like good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the listeners. So just quickly, as Jeff said, I am going to speak fast because of the tight schedule. My name is Clive Butko. I was the ex-CEO of Accenture South Africa, from where I retired at the end of 2012. During my tenure at Accenture, my 28 years, I spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley, in Israel, in India, Boston, New York, building tech companies. The first tech company I built there was probably about $10 million I needed as seed capital. That's about $50,000 today to actually build a business. After I retired in 2012, I then joined Grovest with Jeff, and then I formed my own company called Calon Venture Partners. Next slide, please. Danny, next slide, please. So we've got, Jeff spoke about probably the most important criteria you as potential investors need to look for is the management team. Have they got the track record, the experience, the skills? And if you look at our board there, from Romeo Kamara, the ex-CEO of Vodacom, I've spoken about myself with I've probably been involved in building about 100 tech businesses and having sold 20, 30 of those businesses, to people like Arnold Basarabi, Eddie Oblowitz, Nicholas Liebman, Fatima Habib, and Gil Obed. So we've got over 200 years of experience that we bring to your investment to make sure we're looking after your capital. Next slide, please. So we've made 6 investments in our fund 2, the fund that we're actually raising capital on. Next slide, please. So I don't want to talk tonight about what we want to do, what we can do, what we're going to do. I want to talk about what we have done. So this fund, our fund 2 started 2 years ago. And some of these have been in Fund 1 and Fund 2. So the companies we've invested in, we just have a look there. Our first one quickly is Ozo. Now, many of you that have used Takealot or any of the thousands and thousands of internet sites, you would have probably come across Ozo. When you hit an internet site, you either pay by credit card, debit card, or electronic funds transfer. Ozo is an EFT, electronic funds transfer. It's the biggest EFT in South Africa. And just an interesting fact here, the first R1 billion of gross merchant value that went through our platform. So R1 billion took 2 years, 9 months, and 19 days. In November, during Black Friday, it took us 26 days to hit R1 billion in gross merchant value. We came in at about a valuation of about 250 million rand, and they're currently raising capital now at well north of R1 billion. So we are doing, this business is flying. We're doing about 100 million rand this year. When we invested 3 years ago, they were doing 15 million. So we've 6-7x our revenue in the space of 3 years. Next slide. The next business we're very proud of is an artificial intelligence chatbot, very much part of the 4th industrial revolution. We've probably got the top 25 financial services clients in South Africa. Most, if you had an experience with a call center, you don't want to speak to a call center. You'd rather just speak to a bot. As an example, if you buy an airplane, not a good time now, but from Nedbank, automatically we'll send you via WhatsApp to convert you with travel insurance. We've just raised from European investors about $1.5 million. And this is for our global expansion or European expansion. And our CEO has gone to Europe, and we're just about to close our first few deals in Europe, in addition to our significant growth in South Africa. Next slide. Next business is called Flow. This is a prop tech company and a marketing tech company. So property technology is really bringing buyers and sellers together. So we are taking on the likes of private property and Property 24. And in the last 6 months, we've grown at 70% month-on-month growth in clients, 30% month-on-month growth per month, not per year, per month. So you can do the math there. It's about 200, 300% year-on-year growth. and we're attracting about 20 million South Africans daily through our property tech platform. Next slide. Our next business is called Sendmark. One of the biggest problems we all face today, and I was caught with this in December, is phishing and spoofing, where you get an email from a service provider, you think it's from Standard Bank, or you think it's from Kalon, or you think it's from Jewish Report. It's actually been spoofed or phished. So this business makes the internet a safer place. This business took 2 years to develop their technology, their cybersecurity technology, which prevents phishing and spoofing. So if you use our technology, no one can use your email address to actually phish or spoof anything. We've grown to 1.3 million emails per month. We've got 70 distribution partners, and literally in 13 months, we've got 141 clients. We've got 605 clients on trial, so we should have about 700 clients at the end of the next 2 months. And the business is at the monthly revenue rate. So we're a software as a service business. We're doing 10 times more revenue than we did 1 year ago. So this business, we're already being offered 4 times what we invested at. And we're not interested in taking capital because we want to probably go to much higher than 4 times once we actually raise our next round of capital. And that could be a global raise as well. Next slide. Our next business is it's a digital marketing business called Mobiz. It's a very interesting business. If you want hyper-personalized
I'm afraid that is your time. So Clive, let's just have a quick discussion with you for 2 minutes. And my question is, how risky are these investments? They're clearly high returns available, but how risky is this? Where does this fit into someone's general investment portfolio in terms of
thanks,
risk?
Harry, but I'm going to cheat you. That business I was just talking about, when we invested, it was 17 million rand per annum. It was risky. Last year, in 1 year, we went from 17 million to 65 million. So we've just completely de-risked the business. Ozo is a 100 million rand business. We've de-risked the business. So it is a risky asset class. Our returns, we look at between 30 and 38%. And at the moment, based on if you invested in February 19, 1,000 Rand per share or 1,100 Rand per share, we're sitting at 1,502 Rand per share. And we're raising capital at 1,400 Rand a share or at 70,000 Rand minimum investment. So we have fundamentally de-risked those. And really the key thing here is knowing how to pick the winners. It's a highly risky asset class, but you just need to get 2 out of 5, 6, 7 of these right, and you can make a 10 to 20, 30, 40 times return on our investors' capital. But we look at a 30 to 38% return, and we're absolutely on track to deliver those type of returns.
So Jeff, within your portfolio, would you have something that looks like this? And if so, what percentage of your portfolio would you invest in something like this?
Again, so depending on what your asset, your risk appetite is. If you have a higher risk appetite, you would go for a tech type share, where Clive is predicting somewhere between 30 and 38% IRR. If your risk appetite was not as great, you might want to go maybe for a solar type asset or a hospitality asset where there's an asset underpin, but your IRRs are probably closer to the 20% IRR mark. So, and also one would also have to determine whether you want dividends or you want capital growth. The tech fund is generally a capital growth fund because you're waiting. You don't get, there's not a lot of dividends coming through because what happens is the guys are reinvesting their profits into the tech and into new markets. So I think it's all dependent on what the risk appetite is of the investor.
Great. Thank you, Clive. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We're going to give people in a moment an opportunity to be able to tell us if they want you to contact with them with more information. So thank you for joining us this evening. Lovely to see you. And we're going to move on to Sibongile. Yeah, if you could turn on your camera, please. Welcome. Evening. Lovely to have you join us this evening. I'm embarrassed to say I don't know about your fund, which is WDB Fund. Please tell us about that.
All right. Okay. My name is Bongile Zulu. I'm a distant relation of Shaka Zulu. However, without the vocal cords close to our recently departed Sibongile Zulu. So WDB Growth Fund is a Section 12J impact fund, which is focused on increasing participation of youth and women entrepreneurs in South Africa. The fund is owned by WDB, 51% owned by WDB Investment Holdings. And we work closely with Seed Academy, which is the fund's pre-investment center. Can we have the next slide, please? So this is the structure. So we've got the investment holdings holding 51% in us, as well as in Seed Academy. Seed Academy, as I said, is our pre-investment center where they provide entrepreneurs with high impact business development support and access to markets while assisting them to become funding ready. Next slide. Our mandate is focused on growth stage businesses, while also providing investors with enterprise and supply development points, as well as the tax benefits that come with it, as Jeff has mentioned. Next slide. Our key objectives are creating an impactful ESG solution while assisting growth stage entrepreneurs. And as mentioned, we have WDB Investment Holdings as our shareholder, supported by GrowVest. So GrowVest is also a shareholder in the business, and they are a very strategic partner to us from a compliance perspective. How the fund works is that an investor would invest into the fund. We'll go into the details of what the requirements are, and that investor will receive a full tax deduction, and that money is used to invest in qualifying businesses as per Section 12J requirements. And all parties would benefit from that investment through dividends. And at the end of the investment period, it would be benefits from the realization once we exit that transaction. And in addition, we do make a meaningful contribution to society. Our track record, so we can go to the next slide. So currently we've got 4 investments, which are quite diverse. We have a stake in Mushate Media, which is an integrated marketing company, which is a BE level 1 company, which is woman owned. And we also have the next slide, quite a meaningful stake in Prime Stars, which is one of our flagship investments. And they have managed to deliver a stellar performance year on year, paying substantial dividends to us and our investors, even with the challenges that we faced in the past year. Our third investment is in MAG. It's a recent investment that we made last year. It's in the manufacturing space, and it has also shown resilience through the past period. And one of our favorite investments, I mean, we love all our investees, and one that is close to our hearts, which is more recent in terms of addressing social problems, is Palesa Pads. The company produces reusable sanitary pads. And when they started off, the business was quite focused on solving the social problem and relying on sponsorships. However, with our involvement, with working with the team at Seed, which is there were partners from pre-investment and post-investment, we have managed to assist Palesa to become a fully commercial and viable operation. We assisted them in creating and launching a retail strategy, and we are actually picking up momentum in the retail space, even though the business did not start off with a strong focus on commercialization and in the retail space. With regards to pipeline, we have a robust pipeline, and I've just listed about 8 potential investments because those are already undergoing assessment. Most of our deals come from large metropolitan areas. However, we do have a presence throughout the country. Just some quick fun facts. The next slide, please. Yes. So our minimum subscription is R1 million. And when we make investments into the investees, our ticket sizes range from 1.5 million to 10 million. And our target returns are risk capital plus CPI and up to an additional 10%. And as mentioned, there are additional benefits with regards to tax, as well as BE points for corporates.
So Sibongile, let's stop you there because that's your time. But certainly, Jeff, the one thing that seems unique and interesting about Sibongile's fund is this fact that you can get skills development and enterprise development points for investing into that fund. Does this mean that the ideal investor is in fact not the individual, but is in fact a corporate looking to boost their BE points?
Absolutely. So how this is really a fund that's focused at corporates who have to improve their triple BE scorecard. So not only are they improving their triple BE scorecard by investing in an impact fund and supporting entrepreneurs and job creation and supply development, but what they're actually doing is they're getting a tax benefit of 28% as well. So it's a really special type of structure that they've developed. And not only that, the BE points get carried forward from year to year, because 70% of the investment gets carried on their balance sheet towards the next triple BE scorecard. So all corporates need to spend 3% on ESD in order to maintain their BE scorecard. So I'd appeal to any of the listeners out there that if they are looking to improve their triple BE scorecard and want to improve their rating, that this is a fund that they should investigate and look at, because it might fit their strategy to improve their scorecard.
So Sibongile, how much money have you raised so far in the funds? How long has the fund been going, and how has the capital raise gone?
So we were established in 2015, and we really started fundraising around 2016. We have had close to 100 million rand in funds that we've raised over the years. We have deployed about 30% of that into those investments that we've listed. And yeah, we still have quite a bit of pot of money. So we're actually attracting both investors and businesses that are looking for funding as well.
Amazing, remarkable. Thank you for joining us this evening. We, in fact, going to pull up a poll now, and we've spoken so far to 3 funds, the Aria Capital Fund, the Kalon Fund, and WDB. They are the true kind of venture capital funds that you traditionally see. If you would like any information from any of these funds, please vote. You can vote for more than one, but this is just a mechanism for us to be able to collect any information, and we will then make sure that we pass on information to you about these funds, so you can speak to them, you can contact them, or they will contact you, send you information, and we can make sure that in fact you get access to all the information. But Jeff, there's a very interesting question that seems to have come up in the question section, and Iva asks us, she says, what happens if you invest in the Section 12J fund, and before it's 5 years and you've exited, the company has grown so big and goes for a listing on the Altex? Is it no longer a qualifying fund? What happens?
So a very interesting question. So one of the exits for Section 12Js when they get to size is to actually list on Altex and make the shares far more liquid. So Grovest was very instrumental in lobbying the JSE, and we actually managed to get the listing in the Altex section for Section 12Js. Unfortunately, none of the 12Js have been ready for this. There was one there, but they decided to hold on in the interim. But if you do invest on Altex, what it really means is that you still hold your shares in Altex for till year 5. You wouldn't sell them, but in year 5 you can put them onto the market because they're far more tradable. So nothing happens. The only thing that's going to happen is that they're going to become far more liquid than they currently are as unlisted.
So, Jeff, I want to share the results of our poll because we asked people where they'd like to find more information from. And you can see of the funds that we've done so far, in fact, 32 people want to get more information about the Aria Capital Fund. 48 want to get more about Kalon Disruption Technologies, and 26 want to hear more from WDB. So there's a lot of interest out there. It's fantastic. And we want to move on to our next section now, because our next section is a section that I love, and that's the hospitality, leisure, lifestyle section. And we've got a number of people that we're going to be speaking to in that section. But you were saying earlier, it's kind of a less risky strategy. So maybe the returns aren't as big when you go for in comparison with true venture capital, but there's an underlying physical asset that really guarantees your investment.
Yeah, so again, so various people are risk averse. and other people are happy to be a little bit more aggressive, and that would go for the tech funds. We know that the tech funds have got the potential to, you know, multiply 10 times and more, but we also have the understanding that they also can go to zero. So, I mean, so that is the risk that one would have to take. When you invest into, let's say, where there's an asset underpin, where there's a property, or such as a hotel or student accommodation, or if you had to invest into a power purchase agreement, there's an underlying cash flow, and obviously with that, the risk is much more reduced, and the return as well would be adjusted accordingly.
So in fact, the first fund we're going to hear from is from Optimize VC. And we're going to start by looking at a video from Optimize. And while the video is playing, if we can ask Gadi to turn on his camera, please. Gadi, that's quite some music you have. Tell us about your investment this year.
Thanks, Howie. Hi, my name's Gadi Cohn, and I'm the fund manager at Optimize Alternative Investments. And I'd just like to give you a bit of background about the fund. We were established in 2015, and Optimize is an alternative investment asset manager with over 440 million Rand under management. Optimize manages an investment portfolio of over 25 Section 12J investments across various high growth sectors, which include prime located hotels, asset rental businesses, and renewable energy installations. Optimize has three core investment principles. The first investment principle is wealth preservation. This drives all of our investments. Protecting investor capital is of the utmost importance to us. We do this by finding strong operating partners with multi-billion Rand balance sheets. The strength of our partners actually was very evident during lockdown, as all our dividends were paid on time in accordance with all projections. It's something we've been very, very proud of. The next investment principle is specific asset selection. So this allows investors to choose the exact underlying investment they want to invest in, so they can see and feel the asset and they know exactly what they're investing in. The third investment principle is low risk investing. And Optimize achieves this by investing in businesses that are underpinned by tangible assets and that have contractual cash flows. This allows us to pay dividends on a semi-annual basis. If you combine all of the above, we are able to immediately deploy investors' capital because the investor chooses their investment before investing with us. As soon as we receive the capital, we then invest in the underlying business and the capital starts earning a return for the investor. So I'd like to tell you about the Optimize 2021 flagship investment, and that's the Apollo Hotel in Sunninghill. The hotel is being developed by Africrest Property Group, an established developer with over 11 years of track record. Africrest have developed over 2,000 residential units and own over 25,000 square meters of gross lettable area. The hotel will service the businesses in the surrounding Sunninghill commercial node. It'll be positioned as an affordable business hotel with a gym, a restaurant, and co-working areas with high-speed internet. Africrest have a strong balance sheet and have navigated this lockdown with great success. It's quite amazing to see what they have done. On the strength of their balance sheet, Africrest have been able to offer Optimize investors a guaranteed income for 5 years and a guaranteed liquidity event after 5 years. That means we know we can exit this asset in 5 years. So I think just to summarize the key investment highlights of the Apollo Hotel, we have a guaranteed income of 8.25% per annum, which allows us to pay dividends on a semi-annual basis. And we have a guaranteed exit after 5 years with a minimum 10% capital growth. I think it's key in looking at the liquidity that Optimize does offer investors. If you combine all of the above, Optimize investors will get over a 15% IRR, and that's after tax and after fees. And that's what we'll be offering for this year.
So Gary, just help me get through all of this. This calculation of IRR. If I put in 100,000 Rand today, we know the receiver of revenue is going to give me back 45,000. I'm going to get dividends along the way. I'm going to get some capital growth. What is the gross amount of all of that? The receiver's 45% he gives me back, the dividend flow, the capital growth that you on the exit. What should I expect that 100,000 Rand to translate into at the end of 5 years?
Okay, great. So I think you've got to break it down into exactly how your return is calculated. So you get, if you put in, let's say, your 100,000 Rand, you'll get 45,000 Rand back from the receiver. And again, that's assuming you're at the maximum marginal tax rate. You'll then get 18,900 Rand in dividends along the way, and that's after tax, after fees. And you'll get a payout at the end of 84,300 Rand. So the reason that payout is say less than the million is that you've got to look at the exit taxes. So I think a very important thing with 12Js is to look at the initial upfront benefit of the 45%, but then know that you're paying 18% tax when you exit the fund. And I think it's something that all investors really should be aware of.
So Gadi, add all of those amounts together. What does the 45 plus the 18 plus the exit, what is that figure that we come to?
You put in 100,000 and you get out 148,000.
So over a 5-year period, you're going to make a 48,000 Rand profit on 100,000 Rand investment. And that's after all fees, after all taxes.
And it's something that we put in our brochures. We break it down for you, and we actually do share our cash flows with investors if they would like to see them.
And just one last question before I hand over to Jeff, is that building looks very familiar. That's the old PwC building in Sandton, is it not?
That's correct. So AfriCrest have actually bought up quite a lot of that commercial node, and they're doing a lot of residential conversions. So what they're doing with this building is they're building a couple of hundred residential units and a small hotel section of it, which we'll be funding. And there'll be sort of like a lifestyle apart hotel investment. So there'll be residential, you have concierge, you'll have a gym, co-working areas. So it's a really exciting development.
So Jeff, in fact, Section 12J precludes you from investing in property with one exception. And that exception is for hotel keeping purposes. That's almost the loophole that if you run a property as a hotel for 5 years, that in fact you can get a property guarantee underlying your investment. So it's become quite a popular thing to do, hasn't it?
Yes, I wouldn't really call it a loophole. I think it's by design. I mean, hospitality in South Africa represents about 10% of our GDP. And I'm talking about this in normal times pre-COVID. Obviously, now that travel, things are going to change, and it's obviously having its effect. So it's a huge, it's about 1.5 million jobs that are in the hospitality industry. So it's a very, very big industry, and it needs money. And pretty much banks don't really fund hospitality assets. I think through when they had the golf courses and all the rest of it, very, very hard to get funding for hospitality assets. So I think the Section 12J has certainly allowed businesses to grow with the benefit of having received retail funding from Section 12J. But yes, the good news is that there is a property underpin. It is bricks and mortar, and that it's a physical asset that certainly has value that it can't evaporate.
So Gadi, this isn't your first hotel investment. You've done multiple, have you not?
Yes, we've done the Rockefeller in Cape Town. We've done the Voca Hotel in Rosebank. And I think the key theme there is that we have revenue underpins to ensure minimum returns to investors. And what we've added in the last 2 years is that guaranteed exit. So we see ourselves as a lower risk fund because we're guaranteeing a liquidity event for investors to return their capital to them. We do forego a little bit of upside in return for that, but we found that our investors are just looking, for a safe, moderate return with the return of their capital.
So maybe I can pose this question to both Jeff and Gadi, but Aubrey asked the question, what happens if an investor dies before 5 years? I think Aubrey's being very optimistic here.
So Aubrey, don't die before 5 years, please. The reality is that you're allowed to transfer or bequeath your investment to your spouse with any estate duty. Alternatively, the state would need to hold the investment for the term of 5 years for there not to be any recoupment. Should, however, the state or the trustees of the state want to put the asset to make it more liquid and sell it before 5 years, there would be a recoupment event.
Okay, cool. Gadi, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. We're going to give people the opportunity to let you know if they want to hear more about your amazing investment. Thank you to Optimize for joining us this evening. We'll see you a bit later.
Thanks very much.
So now, Jeff, in fact, Pepper Club is something that fits within your stable as well. It's a hotel in Cape Town. I think many of us have gone to the Pepper Club for a drink in the days where we could still have a drink. And we welcome Jeff Solomon. But before we speak to you, Jeff, let's have a look at your video. Jeff, I have fond memories of drinking too much tequila from a balcony in your hotel. Tell us about your investment.
Excellent evening, Howard, and everyone else. So Pepper Club is one of our properties that we developed and opened to the public 10 years ago. We're very proud of Pepper Club in that it's won numerous international awards. I don't think that Diageo or Smaller are involved in it in any way. They're on the screen. So Pepper Club has won, as I said, numerous international awards over the last 10 years from significant sectors of the community. We play to a very high-level audience of movie industry, sports stars, politicians, businessmen, etc. The Pepper Club Fund is a very low-risk fund which offers investors, it lowers the barrier to entry for investors to get into a significant city property in Cape Town, which is the darling of South African property industry, with a very, very low 5% deposit. We offer them 95% gearing, and which is repayable partly out of their tax recovery and partly out of long-term funding, which we offer investors. We offer them a guaranteed yield, an average operating yield for 5 years, which equates to 13.9% on their risk capital. And so it's a very, very healthy return. It's also a minimum return, which is guaranteed by the Solomon Brothers Group. So it kind of covers any downside of any sort of trading risk. At the same time, we offer investors also a guaranteed put option or buyback at the end of 5 years. So that is it's a liquidity event, but the most likely liquidity event at the end of 5 years, if investors wish to exit, would be to sell the property to a major investor, such as an institution or a foreign hotel buyer, and people would then cash out with a large capital uptick. One of the perks of owning or becoming a shareholder in Pepper Club is that you also enjoy free room nights every year. So for a minimum investment that we take of 1.08 million, which only requires a 54,000 Rand deposit, a person gets 6 free room nights a year. And if they invest up to their maximum limited for an individual of 2.5 million, which is limited by 12J's legislation, they get 15 free room nights a year. This has obviously got quite a significant value, which is a non-cash bonus return worth probably about 4,000 Rand a night on average. Pepper Club is we built Pepper Club 10 years ago, opened the doors as I mentioned. It's an ungeared investment. The investment that people make is essentially in bricks and mortar with a hotel, with FF&E. It's an established hotel with a very established management team doing a superb job, and they are effectively in a very low risk real estate type investment, although it's wrapped up in a hotel operating company. So I think that for people who don't want to be in a high risk environment, they're showing very good returns with a property capital appreciation uptick in the Cape Town environment.
Yes, because Danny flipped through your slides, I gave you an extra minute in case you thought it was going on too long. But I want to just understand this idea of you only pay a 5% deposit. So your minimum requirement is an investment of 1 million. Is it 1,008,000 Rand?
1,080,000, 1,08. So it's 1,080. Yeah.
Okay. So I put in 1,080,000 Rand into your investment. How much cash must I actually give you?
Right. So a person can obviously pay cash. Gearing is not a requirement. It's a tack on offer. All a person has to put down is a 5% deposit, and they pay 40% when they get their tax refund, and then they also get a long-term loan for 5 years of 55% of the purchase price. And all our funding is at prime, which is currently only 7%. And also their long-term funding is doesn't need to be serviced by the investor. We capitalize all the interest and we credit them with their annual dividends. And it's pretty much at the moment cash flow positive. So their long-term debt is more than serviced by the returns.
So I get all the tax advantage now, but ultimately I don't have to pay out all the cash to you at this point in time. It's due whenever the investment is really due, the majority of it.
Exactly. You're actually using other people's money. Effectively, the receiver is putting in 45%, or SARS are putting in 45% of the investment, and our finance company is putting in the other 55% for you. So very, very little money is required from the investor's pocket.
And is there a guarantee in this at all?
Absolutely. Well, the returns are guaranteed. They're underpinned by our institution. So we guarantee a return every year to the investor. And that, as I say, averages 7.6% operating yield, which is on risk capital 13.9%. And when we started just over a year ago, prime was sitting at 10.25%. It's now sitting at 7%. With every likelihood, it's going to remain low for quite a long time. So the investors are sitting pretty with positive return, positive cash flow, even on the geared investment.
So, Jeff, this looks like quite an amazing opportunity for people to not lay out a significant amount of money up front and yet still get the tax advantage.
So Howie, as you know, this is the only 12J investment that I'm aware of whereby you only have to put down a 5% deposit to secure the investment to actually get your tax benefit. The other 40% would be paid when you get your refund from SARS, and then your 55% is only paid in 5 years' time. But so I think it's a huge opportunity. So people who have got taxable income issues, but maybe have cash flow constraints for whatever the reason is at this point in time, is that they would be able to still invest into the Section 12J and take advantage of the benefit. But I think another point that I want to make here is that this is an existing property with a track record. So prior to COVID, this hotel was generating in excess of 60-odd% occupancies with international visitors, and for a full 10 years. So there's a track record. So operational risk is taken out of it. I mean, a lot of new hotels, you have to, while there might be an asset underpin, there's maybe a track record that isn't there. So here you actually have a track record as well. And also what I want to say is that the Solomon brothers who developed this hotel have, a long history of developing property and hospitality in Cape Town, and have been extremely successful, been involved in 2 listed companies within property, REITs, etc. And so they, when I say backing a team, this is really something that you can consider as a very, very strong team to back.
Amazing. Jeff, we're going to ask people if they're interested in investing. It sounds like quite a unique opportunity. Jeff says for whatever reason you may have cash flow issues, well, people still have to buy food and pay their bonds and pay off their cars and pay for kids' school fees. So there's often not a lot of cash left behind, but you can still get the tax advantage by using a scheme like this where you pay 5% deposit and then the 45% when SARS pays you back.
100% right. And
very innovative.
The Solomon brothers will cash flow them.
Fantastic, enormously innovative. Really appreciate you joining us this evening. We'll give people the opportunity for you to contact them a little later, as soon as we finish this hospitality and property section of the webinar. Thanks so much, Jeff.
Thank you, Howard.
So, Jeff Miller, that brings us on to one of my favorite places in the world. A few months ago, I was at Mdluli at the entrance to Kruger Park, and it is just one of the most spectacular properties, a property in Kruger Park with this infinity pool that overlooks the bush and elephants coming past and sable running past and buffalo. And it is just one of the most perfect locations you would ever seen. So let's just quickly look at an Mdluli video, and then we're going to talk to Malcolm Siegel. Malcolm, you absolutely have a piece of heaven. Unmute yourself and tell us about your investment.
Thank you for that fantastic introduction. Howie, I tell you, you're in good company, because earlier this month, a leading United States travel magazine rated Mdluli Safari Lodge as one of the 10 best must-visit new destinations in Africa. So your judgment is impeccable. But Mdluli really is an amazing story, a heartwarming story, and a great South African success story. But let me warn you up front that this is only for it's only sold to South Africans on condition that you're a bush lover. So you must be a bush lover, and in particular, you must love the Kruger. And if you qualify on those 2 things, we'll consider your application carefully. Then if you'll move forward 1 slide, please. So what we've done here is we've introduced a disruptive new structure for leisure investment, which I'll explain to you in a few moments. But Mdluli was launched, it's now built, it opened exactly a year ago. The construction period was about 18 months. And in the first two investment rounds, these are actual quotations from from two of the investors who have already invested in the lot. Exactly this, an absolute no-brainer for anybody who loves the bush, and the best investment I've ever made. Dan, if you'd move forward. So the story of this in itself is absolutely quite remarkable. Time doesn't really allow me to give you the history of it, but it's tied up in apartheid South Africa, where a community was living near Pretorius Corp. And in the late 1960s, the then authorities decided that they wanted to extend the borders of the Kruger Park to the west. And the trucks and the tractors arrived, uploaded the community members, shifted them to the west across the railway line, and created the new border of the Kruger Park. With the advent of democracy, the then late chief MZ Mdluli made representation to government and was successful in reclaiming the community's land, approximately 1,000 hectares in the Kruger Park between Numbi Gate and Pretorius Corp. And let me say, there will never be another opportunity like this, because the law in South Africa has subsequently been changed, that if there is a land claim within a protected area, and there are many, these days the law is that the affected community will get financial compensation and cannot get restitution of the land. If you'd move forward to the next slide, please, Danny. So this is obviously an investment wrapped around Section 12J. It's fully tax deductible. The minimum investment is 150,000 Rand. It has attractive investment returns. And a factor which I'll emphasize in a moment is the impact on the Mdluli community. Danny, if you'd move forward a slide. So there are really two categories of share class that we offer. When we first launched this 2 years ago, it was based around payment of an annual dividend and an offer of a certain number of free bed nights, a bed night comprising dinner, bed, breakfast, and a game drive. So depending on the quantum of your investment, you got a certain number of free bed nights for a 10-year period. Investors then approached us and said, look, this is such an absolutely amazing opportunity and a piece of heaven, as you correctly describe it, Howie. They said, leave us with the dividend. We don't feel that strongly about getting the dividend. Rather, give us more bed nights, and if we want to earn dividends, we'll invest our money elsewhere. So we then created a bed night only share. So let me demonstrate how that works. Danny, if you'll go forward a slide, please. So if an investor invests, I'm taking an investment of R1 million. As you've heard, the tax is 450,000. The net investment is 550,000. The total bed nights that we're offering for that R1 million package is 500 to be utilized over a 9-year period. So that means that your effective cost per bed is only 1,100 per bed night. The current rack rate, if you go onto the Mdluli website tonight and you seek to book, and these are rates which are significantly discounted because of COVID, you would pay today 2,500 for that bed night. And pre-COVID, the rack rate for that bed was 3,850. So this is actually an absolutely amazing opportunity to secure for yourself, your friends, your family, holidays at exceptionally affordable price in the Kruger Park for the next 10 years. There's a story, a reason why it's a 10-year investment. Time doesn't permit us to go into that now. Then if you just go forward one slide.
No, Malcolm, I'm afraid you're out of time. So I just want to kind of almost summarize. So option one, you can get dividends and bed nights. Option two, you can just get the bed nights. Really interesting, because this isn't just a pure investment in a facility. This is a lifestyle investment.
It is a lifestyle investment, yes. And, I think that we all owe it to ourselves in this in this COVID environment where we've been so long suffering through this pandemic, to take a bit of money and put it into an investment that you and your family can get a great deal of joy out of it. And at the same time, this is also a 50-50 partnership with the Mdluli community. So one is doing tremendous good for the Mdluli community who work at the lodge, who built the lodge, and who are co-shareholders with us in the lodge.
And just so people understand, it's a tented luxury safari experience. In fact, I'm not paid to do this, but I want to tell people there's a special on at the moment that I think the special is a 2,250 Rand a night, dinner, bed and breakfast, including a game drive or a game walk.
It's 100% correct. That's the first anniversary special, but you can use it for Valentine as well.
Okay, so that we encourage everyone to go onto your website and actually book that, because you'll never ever regret it. Jeff, there are not many lifestyle investments where you can get the receiver to pay for a big chunk of your holiday. Let's unmute you.
Yeah, that's the beauty about this particular investment, is that you're able to, it's a lifestyle investment. You can choose that you can have additional bed nights instead of dividends. I think in a beautiful part of the world, which is the Kruger National Park, and what you're actually doing is that you're actually fixing your rate per night for the next 10 years. In addition, you can use it whenever you want, and there's no levy, such a, in timeshare. So it's really timeshare reinvented, and you get your money back at the end of time. So anyone who does love the bush, who wants to and wants to get the tax benefit at the same time, lock in your rate for the Kruger Park, use it whenever you want, and not pay levies, I think it's an ideal investment for you.
Well, Malcolm, I can tell you, I'm a bush lover. I love the Kruger Park. And for the first time ever, I was in the area and I stayed in the camp for the day. I did not go out. And that is a testament to what you've actually built at Mdluli.
Well, that's probably because the viewing from the deck, from the pool, was also fantastic. You probably
exactly
saw
there were
herds
elephants just on
herds of buffalo and many other things.
It is an amazing investment, Malcolm. We're going to ask people if they're interested to vote, so you can get them some more details a little later on. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
My pleasure. Thank you, Howie. Thanks, Jeff.
So, Jeff, we love this idea of this concept of underlying asset, of property that looks after it. Now, Lucid Ventures has come up with another interesting idea as well. It's in the property sector, but it's not within the hotel sector. It's in the retirement village sector. So I'd like to ask Leo to turn on his camera and to tell us about the new Lucid Retirement Living Fund.
Thanks, Harvey. Yes, indeed. If we can start the slides. So a little bit of history, a little about Lucid. So Lucid has been in that 12J space for 5 years, started originally in 2016. We can go to the next slide. And originally in the hotel space, as you mentioned, the first fund was Lucid Ventures, another fund, Lucid Hotel Fund, where originally it was investing in hotel units in other hotel operators. Then the Home Suite Hotel brand was launched. That was about two and a half years ago. And our flagship hotel there in Rosebank actually became the #1 hotel in Johannesburg, rated by TripAdvisor. And we've subsequently launched, in the process of building 3 new hotels under that brand, 2 in Cape Town and 2 in Johannesburg in total. And then, of course, last year, Corona hit, and a little bit of a different appetite in terms of the hospitality space and the hotel space, and a bit of a pivot for us, I suppose, and looking at the asset underpin and at the primary real estate underpin, and we like to look at what else we could do, and hence the Lucid Retirement Living Fund was launched, or is being launched. So let's go to the next slide. So why retirement? So it's an interesting space, and it's unfortunately the slide's not showing properly, but it doesn't matter. I'll run you through it. Essentially, 4 key reasons why we like retirement. A growing sector. The over 60 age group is the fastest growing sector of all the age sectors. Currently 5.4 million people in that age sector, and by 2040 there'll be 9 million in that group. Secondly, it's an underserviced area. There's large waiting lists, and at the top retirement homes in Johannesburg and around the country, up to 2.5 year waiting list to get into a retirement home. And then a concept of age in place, a change in the nature of retirement homes, where instead of a retiree or a resident having to move from assisted living to a frail care centre as they get older or become more frail, you age in place. We build the unit where the retiree will live for the balance of their life, and all the facilities, regardless of the stage of their life, will be provided. And the last one, another key reason in technology, a massive change. Technology, obviously having a change in so many different industries, and in the retirement space, so many different things like, obviously the wearable devices and the GPSs and a whole host of different technology devices, which will enable us to offer a premium service and a differentiated service to our residents. Let's go to the next slide. Then around managing risk. So obviously a key thing in this type of environment is, how does one manage risk? Well, clearly the real estate underpin is, as Howie you've pointed out, is a clear risk mitigator, and that you've actually got a bricks and mortar investment. Experienced team, I'll talk to that just now, but a very experienced team in terms of managing this. Pre-sales, we actually pre-sell many of the units before we even start developing. Now, just a quick thing around what we sell is actually a life route. And the life route is really the route for the investor, the resident who's going to live in the retirement home, to live in that hotel for the balance of their life. And they pay for that. They buy that unit, and when they die, that money is reimbursed, or a portion of that money is reimbursed to their estate. The finance structure itself provides some risk mitigation in obviously the 12J lowers our cost of capital, some clever structuring to reduce the VAT underpin, and there also will be some debt equity raised. And the debt equity, where it provides some risk mitigation to investors, is you certainly know that the banks, if they're going to put money in, they're going to do a thorough due diligence on our structure and on our fund to make sure that all our assumptions are valid. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, the exit, key to understand the exit, and the exit will come in one of two ways. One, a very innovative way that will offer our investors the right to convert their investment into a life route, is what I've just mentioned. So if any of the residents or one of their family members, and you're looking for a retirement solution, they'll be able to convert their investment into a life route. And secondly, the sale of the life routes will provide liquidity into the fund. So we would have sold all the life routes, and that will enable us to pay back the investors after 5 years. There will be liquidity from the fund, from the sale of those life routes. Next slide. Just the team, the experienced team I mentioned. So we've got the Lucid team. It's a partnership of a number of different players. The Lucid team, we've been involved doing this for 5 years, as I've mentioned. Gideon, myself, and Leonard Fine on the Lucid side. Then Cummings and Staples, very, very established property developers. Andrew Cummings, our architects, Julian Katz. And then very importantly, Silveridge, our partners in terms of managing this facility. Michael Katz and Korean Brett will be very well known to many of the viewers in terms of their work that they've done at the Gev and managing and numerous old age homes and hospitals within the Gev environment. Last slide. And just that's it. We've got two sites. That's Houghton. You can go to the next slide, and we've got two different sites, one in Houghton, one in Rosebank, that have been earmarked for these two developments in urban areas very close to where our residents currently live, and that will be very attractive to them. Last slide, sorry. And okay, it's a bit blank. I don't know why it's not displaying, but just to mention, in terms of the last slide, that the minimum, well, the minimum investment will be 1 million rand, and the maximum investment, or 2.5 million. That's the normal. But our fee structure is 1% annual fee with a 20% carry once all the money has been returned to investors.
So, Leo, just tell us, what is a retirement facility? I had my birthday last week. I'm not sure I'm of the age yet. Is it a frail care facility? Is it for active people? Who would go live in something like that?
Typically, it's interesting, many aged facilities are for much older people, and that's because the way a life route works is that you get utilization of the build. You can stay in that property for the duration of your life. Now, if the way the model works is you want those life routes to turn over. If they allow somebody in their 20s, 30s, or 40s who potentially has a life expectancy for 50 years to go and live in one of those facilities, the model will break down. It won't work. So typically, very often, these facilities are only for people 65 and older. So that would typically be your age category. That would be similar to what we'd be aiming at. But certainly many of those residents would be absolutely looking after themselves, will require no help whatsoever, but it is a place for them to congregate, and there's many entertainment and functions and all those kind of things that are offered. I mean, my parents live in a retirement facility. They've just moved in a year ago and absolutely love it.
So does this fit into kind of a hotel type student accommodation exception to the property exclusion
so in order to be
in 12J
compliant, in order to be 12J compliant, we do have to be considered a hotel keeper. So we'll fall under hotel keeper. And that means we have to offer typical hotel facilities, which we clearly would. And, typical things that you'd expect in a hotel when it comes to food and, toilet paper and all those kind of things that you'd expect to find in a hotel would be provided in a retirement home.
Jeff, this is the first retirement thing that I've seen in Section 12J. It's very innovative as well.
Yes, I think what the guys have done, they've chosen a good sector. I like the retirement sector. I think it's a big thing throughout the world. There's lots of people are moving into retirement villages for a number of reasons, for security, and that they have people that they can engage with in the clubhouse and activities and all that type of stuff. Also, I really like the sector. It's the first retirement option that I've seen in Section 12J, and hats off to Leo and team for putting it together.
Great, Leon. We're going to give people an opportunity to let us know if they want more information from you. We are going to have one more presentation in the property-based segment, and then we're going to allow people a poll to vote. So thank you so much for joining us. Regards to all the people at the Lucid team, and to Gidon Novik, who many of us know well, and congratulations on a unique product.
Thanks, Howie.
So let's turn to Westbrook. We've gone for kind of the older generation, but in fact, Westbrook have been one of the great pioneers in the hotel industry in setting up the Capital Hotel Group, or funding the Capital Hotel Group. And Dino, you're also involved in student accommodation.
Yeah, good evening, Howie, and thanks for having me, and good evening to everyone who's watching. Maybe just by way of background, my name is Dino Zukola. I'm fund manager at Westbrook Alternative Asset Management, and I'm also the chairman of the independently constituted Section 12J industry body of South Africa. We as Westbrook, Howie, do two things, to be really simple. We invest in student accommodation through Section 12J, and we invest in asset rentals through Section 12J. But I think before we get into the strategies, very important is to touch on who Westbrook are. I mean, it was discussed earlier how important it is to invest with a manager of repute. I've just put a little bit of info on the screen around Westbrook. Westbrook is a larger alternative asset management business that was founded in 2004 by our chairman and CEO today, Martin Sachs, Mark Mattison, as well as a third party who many of you will be familiar with, the Capricorn Capital Group and Rob Furrer. The business, amongst other things, does Section 12J, where we are proud to be South Africa's largest Section 12J manager. We've got approximately 2.7 billion rand in assets under management, which is multiples larger than our next biggest competitors, from more than 1,000 investors across 4 strategies, one of which you just mentioned. I think more proud than how much money we've raised is how much of it we've spent. That's the ultimate test. And we've invested more than 1.4 billion rand into more than 60 SMMEs around the country. From a performance perspective, we're heck of a proud to have been robust through COVID and to have continued to pay dividends throughout the pandemic. And to my knowledge, we are one of, if not the only Section 12J manager that is now actually in the cycle of exiting investor funds. So we haven't just raised and invested, but we're actually exiting. Our 2016 Aria vintage in the middle of COVID is being exited at nearly a 14% annualized return. What makes us different? We are first and foremost investors. We are materially financially incentivized and aligned to our clients, with our group having more than 100 million rand alongside the 2.7 billion that we've raised. As I mentioned, I've also, as the chair of the 12J industry body, spearheading the debate with National Treasury and Parliament around a potential extension of Section 12J. That being said, what do we do? As I mentioned, we invest into student accommodation and asset rentals. What we look for in Section 12J strategies are strategies that are low risk, because frankly, our view is that the tax benefit takes care of the majority of the return. It shouldn't be underestimated that a Section 12J investment is still a risky SMME. And as a consequence, our view is that it is best to invest with a great manager with very, very experienced partners into low risk underlyings. Our student accommodation fund has been running since 2018. We've got 800 million invested in that strategy. And very simply, what do? We buy quality student accommodation assets alongside great partners around South Africa. And our stack preferred strategy, which we're taking to market this year, is one whereby our capital ranks ahead of that of our partners. Said differently, in the event that there is ever a situation where there's a loss, we would claw into the money that our partners have co-invested alongside ourselves before we, as our clients, take any losses. That fund targets a 15% annualized return, Howie, and pays a dividend every 6 months of approximately 7.2% per annum based on the net investment. Our Westbrook Aria fund is the largest Section 12J strategy in South Africa. It's got about 1.3 billion rand across now 6 vintages of the fund. And in really simple terms, Westbrook Aria is a provider of capital to movable asset rental businesses with predictable revenue streams around the country. We effectively provide capital to acquire assets, and that provides an exceptionally strong level of risk mitigation to our clients. If ever anything goes wrong, not only do we have a contractual claim against our clients for renting out, let's say, an air compressor or a scooter or a helicopter, whatever it may be, but we actually own the asset at the end of the day, which ensures that if anything goes wrong, and we are in the unenviable position of having to work out a capital loss, we not only can sell the assets and realize value, but also, again, as I mentioned in our stack or student accommodation strategy, our partners sit as first loss. Just an interesting anecdote on our Aria strategy, how he is through COVID-19 and through the more than 50 different deals that we've written in Aria to date, we have not encountered a single capital loss. That's not to say we didn't have issues, but in all instances, either working through things with our partners and or at the first loss that our partners have in front of us have protected our clients. That's as simple as it is. I think just for all of you listening this evening, we have a very, very comprehensive online investor toolbox, which is filled with content around Section 12J, how the incentive works, videos on our strategies, and much more. You can visit our website at westbrook.co.za/S12J to find out more.
So Dina, talk to us about your student accommodation fund. What happened during COVID when many students were not at university? And how diversified around the country is it? Where are all these assets?
So ironically, Howie, student accommodation fits within the Section 12J hotel keeping carve-out, as we've discussed. I would say that maybe with the exception of logistics assets, which benefited obviously from the theme of an acceleration of online shopping, student accommodation has probably been the most defensive property class in the country. There's 2 types of student accommodation. There's NSFAS, which is government-funded student accommodation, and then there's the wealthier students, the likes of one of our partners who's Campus Key, where a lot of the kids of some of the people on this webinar might be. NSFAS continued to pay in its entirety throughout COVID. Government were very clear from day one that although students may not be in their facilities, NSFAS would continue to pay. And so we were very lucky there. From a private student perspective, it was a little bit lumpier, I'll put it that way. You are underpinned by a 1-year lease with a parent, and that parent is obliged to pay. But of course, at the end of the day, you've got a relationship with that parent where you hope that their child will come back next year. So in certain instances, what we did is we gave discounts to parents to allow for goodwill. But fortunately, from a Westbrook perspective, the way that the rentals with our private accommodation providers have been structured is such that we have guaranteed income during the period. And so actually throughout the portfolio, we weren't affected. The last answer to your question, where are the properties? They're throughout the country. Our current portfolio includes Johannesburg, which is Doornfontein and Braamfontein. We've got Pretoria, we've got Port Elizabeth, we've got Cape Town, Stellenbosch, and various other jurisdictions. The important thing for us, Howie, is that you've got to have a great university, but not just a great university. It's got to be situated in an area where there's a strong underlying property market, because that further de-risks you. You've got a student business, but you've also got a property which is in a great area.
So, Dino, thank you for joining us. I think Jeff has a question as well, but while he does that, I'm going to ask Danny to pull up another poll, because we've heard from a lot of people within the property-related sector. We've heard from Optimize and their hotel in Sunninghill, from Pepper Club in Cape Town, from Mdluli Safari Lodge, from Lucid and their retirement village, and from Westbrook Stack Student Accommodation. So if you'd like some more information about any of these, we've put it on the screen. Please vote. We'll make sure that people people, in fact, get back to you and you can get some more information about these funds. Jeff, what do you think of the student accommodation fund?
Yeah, so I think student accommodation is a great asset. I think that there is, I think now with COVID and students having to go online, I'd like to ask Dino his view of, does he think that physical student accommodation will still benefit because a lot of students will be going online and learning remotely?
Yeah, Jeff, it's a question we've been asked many times before. So the stats will tell you that there are currently 300,000 too few student beds around the country. That, in the context of how much student accommodation is available, is absolutely monstrous, to be frank. I think in answering your question simply, unfortunately in South Africa, we are nowhere near being in an ecosystem where we can efficiently get our entire population learning online. And if we were to do it, what would ultimately happen is that wealthier kids would be benefited and poorer families would be prejudiced because they simply don't have access to internet, to computer facilities, to conducive studying environments, etc. So our view is that online will become a theme potentially for wealthier pupils and for wealthier children. That being said, universities, in my view, will not move to a fully online ecosystem. They can't physically manage it, but more importantly, they can't equitably do it from a South African perspective. The second thing, and we've all been 18-year-olds before, there's much more to student accommodation than just being educated. In fact, for many first-year students, I can imagine how he was like this. Your
still
education,
am, Dino, still am.
Probably, going to university was not the reason you went to university. Going to university was about leaving the house, was about becoming an adult, and frankly, was about getting away from your parents a lot of the time. And so whilst we believe that there will definitely be this concept of a dual online and in-person learning environment going forward, I really do not believe that the concept of a student wanting to leave the home and a parent wanting their student to stay in a safe learning environment will go away.
So let's look at some of the results of what has interested people. 26 people have asked for more information from Optimize. 31 want to hear more from Pepper Club. 37 want to hear from Mdluli. So clearly those bed nights are very great incentive. The retirement seems to be very, very attractive to people. 42 people have asked for more information on the Lucid Retirement Living Fund. And 35, Dino, people want to hear more about the Stack and the Aria Fund. In fact, we're going to poll again for the Aria Fund in our next section as well. Dino, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
So, Jeff, that almost concludes the section that we have relating to property. Before we move on to issues of asset rentals and energy and schools, a question has come in relating to staying in Pepper Club in Mdluli, and that is, can I give my bed nights away to someone else to stay there?
So really, I think it all depends on what, the mandate of the various fund is. But I think you can give it away to someone else, but you can't trade them on a secondary market. So the idea is that you don't want to start putting them onto Gumtree or Jewish mommies to sell your nights because, that'll create a problem. But if you want to give it to, gift it to your friends, family, or employees, certainly could.
Okay, fantastic. So let's move on to our next section, and that's the section on asset rental. And Avi Gordon, welcome. Nice to see you.
And nice to see you too. How are you? Am I a little brighter now?
Are you? Well, you've always been really bright. Now we can just even see you.
Okay, great, cool.
So, Avi, you've been in this industry a few years. Tell us about your fund.
Okay, cool. First of all, yeah, there we go. Great. Slides. So Howie, look, you asked me to be simple and entertaining. I can definitely be simple and easy to understand because we're really not that clever or complicated. But from an entertaining point of view, you may need to help me with a bit of banter, if you don't mind. But briefly, what we do, very simply, and we can actually just jump straight into the next slide, is we're an asset rental fund. So what we do, we purchase operating assets and we rent them out. Sounds even more complicated than it is. Really, and we can talk about the different types, and maybe if you'll let me, I'll just tell a story about our most recent investment case, and that'll give a clear indication. But we buy assets. It might be a commercial fleet, so buckies, etc., that will rent out to Avis or whatever it may be. And we just help tackle the challenge that a lot of SMEs have in South Africa, which is access to finance. So you might have access to it. It might take very long to deal with a bank to really get around to it. So what we'll do is we'll buy these assets and we'll rent them out at attractive rates. We'll get stable, dependable yields for our investors, and we'll help these SMEs grow their businesses. We can just hop on to the next slide. I'll tell you, about a year ago, how we started doing something very cool, and that was medical asset rentals. So we partnered up with a really nice group, and what we found is that a lot of young doctors, or even more senior doctors who are looking to go into new practices or second practices, it takes really long to deal with the banks. So, and a big part of it, it might be an X-ray equipment or a dentist chair, whatever it is. The equipment cost of setting up a new practice can be quite high. So we found a really nice niche. We found some really cool partners. And what we've done is over 23 deals in the last year where we buy these equipments and we lease them out. I mean, our first story is probably the best story, right? Go back a slide, if you don't mind. So we started out really a young doctor, early 30s. He was part of a practice. There were 3 of them. They were doing 20 million rand revenue as dentists. So really great credit profile, up and coming specialist. And he wanted to open his second practice. He was dealing with a certain bank, which I'm sure 80% of the people here bank with. And he was having a really hard time. It was just taking really long. He wanted to start his second practice. He wanted a new dentist chair, and it was just, he couldn't get anywhere. It was taking months. So he reached out to us and we took a look at the transaction. And I think within 48 hours, obviously from being sent a pack, which was about 40 documents, which wasn't that fun to work through, but once it was put together quite nicely, we saw that this is a really attractive client. This is someone we want to support. We bought the equipment, rented it out. About 6 months later, that same bank called me and said, Avi, can we buy the deal? We've got it through our committee. We're all very happy to, help this guy out now. So they had to wait 6 months. The practice was already trading, was already at a profit. So simply said, what we do is we buy things, we rent them out. We don't look for capital growth. We don't try and buy a dentist chair and hope it's going to be worth more than it is in 5 years. We know it's going to stay at a really dependable kind of rate. It'll depreciate over time. We rent it out. We earn profit on those rentals, and we declare dividends to our shareholders. Simply put, that's what we do. And how am I doing for time? Can I share 1 or 2 more cool facts?
Yeah, you share 1 or 2 more cool facts.
Okay. I mean, I think what was really interesting is through this partnership, we came across a whole periphery range of services with our partners, and some of it is like practice management. So we found that a lot of young medical professionals are great at being dentists or great at being doctors. They aren't necessarily good at managing their books. So what we were able to do is partner with various institutions, one of them being MFI, who can take a look at any specialist that manage thousands in the country and say, we'll do all your accounting, all your financial work for you. What that enabled us to do is take a look at a transaction beforehand. They'll put together a forecast budget. So new practice with this young doctor in the middle of nowhere, we would have no idea how it's going to look. They put together budget financials to a frightening degree of accuracy. They also help them manage their finances. So you've just got layers and layers of de-risking taking place. So while we aren't targeting the greatest and most wonderful yields out there, we are a low-risk fund. All asset rentals are. We're able to get really, really asset underpinned, really secure investments and just generate stable income. So yeah, that's what we do.
So Avi, let's talk about return. I give you 100,000 Rand, or what's the minimum investment into your fund?
105,000, but if you need Howie, I'll lend you 5.
Thank you. So I put 105,000 in. Let's do the same calculation that we did a little earlier. After 5 years, the receiver of revenue is given me back 45,000. You've given me dividends. You've given me some capital. What is that total figure at the end of 5 years that I've received back?
So the cool thing is, I'm the second guy you've asked us to, and the first one was Gutty, and our answers are like within a couple of grand of each other, but it's also in the region of 148,000 Rand, 148,800. And that being said, we're targeting a 16 to 18% return. We're very pleased with that. If you look at our return profile, you don't even have to look at it. I can tell you, it's quite simple. It's a 7.5% dividend paid out over 2 payments a year. That's all we are, no capital growth. And I'm not going to try and pretend this chair is going to be worth more in 5 years than it is now.
Fantastic. But Jeff, this entire industry that we have of asset rentals, it's a big part of Section 12J. There are a number of companies doing it.
Yeah, there are a number of companies, and I think the secret to choose which company you actually want to invest in is actually the deployment of the capital. Because if there's lazy capital sitting on the balance sheet, it's going to be earning 3 or 4% taxable income, it being interest. So really, what you want to do is you want to have a company that can deploy quickly, so they can earn the 15 or 16%. RRs, and that's what's going to happen. So I think it's very important that when one looks at asset rental companies, is that you look at deployment and how quickly they can deploy.
So Avi, what's the weirdest thing you've actually rented?
Do you really want to know?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. There was a very strange, and I'm not going to go into detail, piece of radiology equipment that we had to look at that did some very strange functions. I had to do quite a lot of research and find out some scary things. I'll share more with you after if you want, but that was pretty strange. We've also done a couple of golf carts, and I guess buckies aren't weird, but yeah, interesting stuff there, but the medical stuff we'll share afterwards. I don't want to scare people off.
So not only can we potentially invest in your business, but we can, if we have a golf cart, you will in fact fund it and rent it back to us as well.
Absolutely. As long as I'm sitting with you on that golf cart drinking tequila, then we're good for it.
If you saw the way I play golf, you definitely wouldn't make that offer. Sunstone Capital, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us, Avi. We're going to give people an opportunity to tell us if they're interested in your fund by a vote coming up pretty soon as well. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Cool.
Just for the people watching on YouTube tonight, I know you haven't been able to vote. So Danny is putting together a Google spreadsheet that he's going to post there. If you'd like us to contact you about any of these funds at all, Danny is going to be posting that into the chat on, has it already happened, Danny? Fantastic.
It's in the chat.
It's in the chat on YouTube as well. So please let us know, and we'll make sure that the correct people actually contact you there as well. Which brings us on to the Infinity Fund, which is in fact also an asset-backed rental fund. Jonty, before we speak to you, I believe you have a video you'd like us to watch.
We do.
So Danny, if you'll play us Jonty's video, please. So Jonty, you keep on telling me you have the best performing fund in the entire 12J industry. Is that correct?
Well, Howie, a great question. I think if you do a good detailed search into the market, what you'll find is that very few Section 12J funds, for whatever reason, don't actually report on their numbers. So the digging that we've done, we've uncovered a lot of returns that Section 12J funds have achieved. And I'm confident to say that we are, if not the best, one of the top performing Section 12J funds in the market, and have been for a number of years. In fact, just yesterday on MoneyWeb, they released one of my articles where we analyzed the performance of various funds in the market. And safe to say, a bit biased, but our fund has done exceptionally well. And what's quite interesting today is we've heard from a lot of fund managers who've really spoken about potential returns, targeted returns that they're hoping to achieve for investors. And I think what's very different from our presentation today is I'm going to tell you how we've done. And as an investor, I think that'll give you the peace of mind that we'll be able to achieve the returns that we're currently achieving for our investors.
So Nu, tell us.
Cool. So 1 second. So Infinity Anchor Fund it's an asset rental fund. And effectively what we do is we invest into businesses that either earn rental income or contractual income. And let me explain. So as an example, Secutech is an asset rental company. They rent out security equipment to security companies or estates or apartments. And fortunately for this company during COVID, they were completely unaffected from COVID. Their clients were essential businesses. And as a result, the business continued to perform, and we did really well, just under 10%. That obviously ignores the tax benefit because that's a return from the underlying business. We've invested around 16.5 million rand into the business. An example of a contractual income is a company called Rise Telecoms. And this has been really an exceptional investment for us. As you can see by the date, we invested during COVID. And you would think, why would you do that? But actually what happened in this business is this company installs large modems into apartments and estates and then transmits the signal to the residents. Instead of laying expensive fiber cables throughout the building, you can simply log on onto your computer, similar to if you're at the airport and logging on to Always On. These residents can simply log on to a modem, buy the data, so it's upfront payment, and surf the web at a rate which is very similar to fiber, but at half the cost. So pre-COVID, fantastic business. During COVID, it's absolutely shot the lights out. The business is doing exceptionally well. And we think even once the vaccine has been distributed through South Africa, the business will continue to do well, given that people are now moving from DSTV to Netflix. They're working from home. So this for us has been a great investment. We've invested just under 22 million rand. We still are able to invest up to another 25 million rand into this business. And we're probably going to do that after the next fundraise. If we're talking returns, this fund has done unbelievably well as an average dividend yield. So this is ignoring the tax benefit. If you look at what I'm showing you here, if you're an investor and you invested in this fund, you would receive just under 5% every single year. And for the last 24 months, every 6 months, we've paid a consistent dividend, and we've averaged for investors just under 5%. So the fund's done really well. If you want to compare us to other funds as a dividend, our dividend is just under 9% if you include the tax benefit. If you include the tax benefit from a return perspective, we're just under 16%. We've been under just under 16% for a number of years. From a deployment perspective, and I think Jeff touched on that, this fund has done exceptionally well from a deployment perspective. Year on year, we've deployed all our capital. This year is the first year where there's been a delay, and I think it's quite understandable. During COVID, we took our foot off the pedal and we really looked around at the businesses we were looking to invest in. And of all the businesses, we only invested in one. We had to rebuild our pipeline of investments, and we did that. And we think by the end of March, we'll be 100% deployed for our current investors. From a performance perspective, again, the market's very thin in terms of being able to review other Section 12J funds. But if we look at our largest competitor, the middle line to the left of it shows you the actual returns that we've achieved, and the right-hand side shows the returns that we're projecting. And if you compare us to our largest competitor, our funds on the top line, you can see it's performed exceptionally well. We're looking to return just under 1.3 million rand. So as an investor, you can see what the type of returns we're looking to achieve, where our competitor is looking to achieve just over 1.1 million rand. For investors who are maybe more senior in age or are risk adverse, we have a second option. Here, investors can invest into our Infinity Stable. In this option, we can only invest into businesses that have been pre-approved by certain funding houses. They've provided us with a guarantee. The guarantee has two components. One is a guaranteed return, and the other component is a guaranteed exit. So after 5 years and 1 month, you don't have to worry about whether we're able to sell or liquidate our investments. There's a large financial institution who's going to come along and buy assets at our original purchase price. So for an investor who's more senior in age and really not looking to take too much risk, this is a really nice option. The dividend in this fund is only 2%. If you add the tax benefit as a return, it's just under 11%, but there are significant guarantees in this business. And what's important is your investment is invested literally in a couple of weeks or less than 2 months from the date that you invest.
So John T, let's ask the same question that we asked to Avi and that we asked to Optimize as well to Gadi. I give you 100,000 Rand. After 5 years, I've got 45,000 back from the receiver. I've got dividends from you. I've got capital appreciation. In the Infinity Fund, what is that final number after 5 years when I add all of those things together?
The final number is just over, I think just over 1.1 million Rand. But I think what's fundamental.
This one we invested 100,000. So
if you invest 100,000, just over 120,000 Rand. I think the key difference here is this isn't a number that we're hoping to achieve. This is a number that we're currently achieving for our investors, and our track record really shows for it. So, in this type of market, if you get it wrong, obviously your investors can really suffer financially. Obviously, there's a tax benefit that buffers an investor's returns. But if you do a half decent job, currently we're doing an exceptional job, just under 5% as dividend yield. I think our investors will be really happy after the 5-year term.
Cool. Jonty, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. We're going to give people the opportunity to find out more about your fund by answering a question in 1 or 2 minutes. But we're going to deal with a few other funds that are in really interesting spaces as well. Jeff, we kind of now moving into the creative environment when it comes to funds. So let's talk to Adrian from Rensel. Adrian was saying earlier, while City Power turned off most of our electricity in Johannesburg today, your clients were smiling.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me. Let me just get the show on the road here. Okay. Thanks for having me this evening. Okay, so I just want to start off with who is Rensel and what do we do? Now, Rensel is a Section 12J registered fund aimed at advancing the adoption of renewable energy in the residential sector in South Africa. Now, you might wonder why the residential sector specifically, and that's because the residential sector is one of the largest energy consumers in South Africa, but it has very few services or options available to it to facilitate the adoption of renewable energy when compared to, in contrast to the industrial or commercial sectors, who for quite some time now have had a lot of PPA options catered exactly to their needs. Now, in a similar way to the traditional renewable energy investments in the industrial and commercial sectors, this asset class also has an asset underpin with a long-term annuity income. In recent history, actually during this lockdown, we were pleasantly surprised by how COVID resilient the business was. And during the first few weeks, we didn't really know what to expect. And we were pleasantly surprised to see household demand for electricity shoot through the roof. So that the systems that we installed were actually able to fully perform to their maximum potential. And it was a pleasant surprise and everybody was happy. I mean, I'm sure everyone can recall the load shedding that took place during during lockdown. Our clients could continue working, no impediment to their lifestyle or anything of that nature. And obviously there's a recession, similar things will happen. People will be at home more often, and this form of business is very resilient to that. Now, the benefits of this kind of investment are quite obvious, but if I could name these points. Now, a big hurdle to residential investments in solar and renewables is the upfront cash. Now, we take that away by funding the investment upfront, and the consumers, they pay for a monthly fee or cost to actually use that asset. Now, we aim for a price point where it's a cost replacement. So the residents would pay the same amount they were paying previously for the electrical bill at the end of every month. But now, rather than being at the mercy of the grid or Eskom or whatever the case may be, they now have the use of the solar system and the battery system. So this both reduces their carbon footprint. It takes away load shedding, general power failures like we had today. And ultimately, South Africa wins as well with reduced load on the grid. It reduces the severity and the probability of load shedding in the bigger picture. Investors win, they earn a 5% yield and a 20% IRR on risk capital. Now, the underpinnings of the investment are pretty simple. We have to break the investments into two separate pieces. There's a 20-year power purchase agreement that governs the solar system. The reason that it's 20 years is because this is the design life and the warranty period for that equipment, whereas the battery system has to be for 10 years because that is the warranty life, even though its design life is 15. Now, this investment creates a monthly cash flow, which does reduce credit risk to a great degree. And we also contract directly with body corporates. So we don't have to take any risk when it comes to collections or from the individuals and having to go through that process. Furthermore, we also promote the use of prepaid meters to further reduce any credit risk that there could be. Now, this is a very highly liquid asset class. In the event that we have to create some liquidity, we can easily do so. And this asset class creates a very desirable long-term cash flow. So it's over a 20-year period of time. And these cash flows can either be securitized and sold at a premium or sold as a going concern to another group of investors to create that exit for our investors in 5 years' time. Now, at present, we have 3 projects in the pipeline ranging in value from 6 to 12 million rand. And we're looking to fund these projects' development. In our current capital raise, we're looking to raise 20 million rand for that. Now, to date, we've proven our model thoroughly. We've had a very large site actually in Stanton, a 20-unit complex here, operating just shy of 2 years. We've avoided to date over 150 power failures, today being another one of them. And the residents are so satisfied. It increased the quality of life. People can continue their lives like normal. So much so that the rental income has actually gone up when the trend in the area was for the rental incomes to actually go down. And we have been paying our 5% dividend to investors as promised. And that's my contact information if anybody has any further questions. This is quite a technical thing, and I'm very limited in my presentation time. I don't want to be cut off like everybody else.
So Adrian, tell us, because that was perfectly exactly on 5 minutes. Tell us our expected return over 5 years. The same question we've been asking everyone. Let's try benchmark this. After year 5, on 100,000, we got 45 back from the receiver of revenue. We've received dividends from you in the end. If there's a capital payment at the end, what's that final figure after 5 years when I look at my investment and I say I did well or badly?
Yeah, so net of all fees and taxes in the hands of the investor, if you put 100,000 Rand in, you should, if all things are fair and equal, 123,400 Rand, if I'm not mistaken.
Cool. Jeff, yeah. Do you like the segment of the marketplace?
Yeah, I love the segment of the marketplace. The reason why I like it is because you've got contractable and predictable cash flows for 20 years, escalating at agreed CPI plus 2% or whatever it may be. And it's good for everybody because we don't know what the escalations will be for in the electricity prices. If they're anything like they have been in the past, we've seen 15 and 12% increases. And if you had to increase these things by 6 or 7% for 20 years, it's very, very good for the investor and very, very good for the off-taker. I think that it's also, we know that for the next couple of years, South Africa is going to be under huge pressure on the grid. And so by, offering this to these gated communities, I think it's fantastic. Batteries are coming down in price. But I think more importantly is that we know that the technology works. We know that it's been around for hundreds of years or 100 years. We know that the sun shines, that's been around for thousands of years. And so it's a great investment. I think what also that in terms of Adrian, he's also developed a tech solution that remotely that monitors these installations and that he can actually deal with any problem solving or putting on geysers or switching off geysers from a remote site, which I think is also very, very novel and something that I think that adds a USP to his offering. So well done, Adrian.
Adrian, tell us last thing quickly. Has anyone asked you to fund a Tesla Powerwall yet?
Look, if the price is right, and I know there's quite a premium on it, but if that's what you want, then we can fund it.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to listen to 2 more funds quickly, and then we're going to ask people to vote and if they want to hear more information back from you as well. So moving on to education, which is another area of great concern to South Africa. We have electricity problems, but Peter, we definitely have educational problems as well. How do you play in the space?
Well, let me just share my screen quickly with you. Cool. So I represent Manga Investment Partners. We're a dedicated Section 12J school investment company. We've been investing in schools in the Section 12J space since 2000. We started 2017, and we have over 200 million in assets under management. And today we're talking about our STARS fund, though, because we've already closed our first fund, Sky, for further funding. And what we do is quite simple. We go into a high growth area with very strong demand fundamentals in the area, where there's no government schools going into those new areas, and where the only other schools there are these quite old-fashioned, very expensive schools. We buy the facilities, we redevelop them into these state-of-the-art 21st century learning environments. And we buy schools that are already profitable, so they've already got through their J-curve. So as you expand and you get them to scale, pretty much every other learner that comes through goes straight to the bottom line. And a school managed properly can comfortably generate a 20% return as an asset class on its own. It's like the benchmark asset class return. you then structure it in a 12J, and it gives you this really amazing opportunity where you've got an asset that's an underpinned asset that's significantly de-risked thanks to SARS's repayment of half your money, and your returns are significantly boosted through having half your money back up front. So what it does is it takes an investment that would have been 20% on its own and boosts it up to 25, 30% even. So it makes STARS a really nice middle ground fund of the 12Js that are out there, in that it has both the high potential to generate really good returns that private equity funds are offering, and at the same time it has the asset-backed underpin that the assets and the rental assets are offering, while also helping save South Africa by trying to fix education. So we're actually only doing quite a small raise. It's only 15 million, and it's just to get our 12J requirements aligned, because our investors didn't actually want to dilute. And after fees and exit taxes and everything, we expect the returns to be about 20 to 25%. And as you said, you've got to know, like, obviously schools are not a very liquid asset. How do we get out? We've got a lot of options, because schools, while they're not liquid, they're actually a separate asset class. And there are a lot of players in the market. So ideally, we'd exit as a private equity sale through one of our existing shareholders. We've already initiated discussions, or any other private equity player in the market. But there are trade sellers, the Kura and Epitex of the world are very interested in great schools. There's lots of smaller school groups you can merge with. There's a listing on the LTEX, which we could follow, or we could do the sale and leaseback option. So there's a lot of ways we can get out of this. What's nice is that everyone on our board is materially invested in this business. So we all personally incentivized to make sure that our bottom line is best suited by the best exit possible. So while we have lots of options, we also have lots of incentive. We've got 3 campuses, and it will only be these 3 campuses that this fund invests in, all located in these urban edge areas of Johannesburg: Broadacres, Chartwell, and Honeydew. The Broadacres campus is our first one, and it's our flagship. It's a school it's supposed to be this like farm environment in the middle of the city where children can learn naturally. We developed it over 2 phases in 2019 and 2020. Now that it's finished, it is shooting the lights out. It's doing much better than we actually thought it would. Because if you take a high growth area where there's nothing else available, you turn into an existing school with a reputation, you turn into this really beautiful learning environment, and you operate at a material discount to the competitors, parents move their kids there. And we've seen this at Broadacres. Our preschool on this site is full, and our primary school at the junior ages is full, and we're expanding the whole school to add an extra class per year to meet up with the demand. And the benefit of being in a school with demand is that even during a pandemic, you continue to perform because parents want to keep the kids at the school. So we saw in last year, our EBITDA almost tripled, and our learner numbers went up by 60%, just because we finished building such a beautiful school. The other 2 campuses that we'll be developing this year, the one in Chartwell is going to be the high school site for the Broadacres campus. So it'll benefit from the natural demand of all the learners coming into from the primary school. And you can see from the images here, the vision is to be a more of a modern environment that blends the divide between where high school ends and work starts. So the environment's a lot more of a shared working environment, much more a modern environment that probably prepares learners for a 21st century working environment. And our final one that we'll be building at the end of this year is in Honeydew Ridge. It's right next to the Eagle Canyon Golf Estate with over 1,000 high-income homes. It'll be a smaller campus than our Broadacres and Chartwell campus, it'll be our first campus from nursery school to high school, all on the same site. And the first campus that we operate under our Sky brand. Also with this lots of natural space and outdoor environments, 21st century learning. So that's very, very progressive approach, coupled with our really strong operating approach to make sure that we change education and make lots of money doing it.
So Peter, can we just check, education is clearly a business. Who's your target market here that you're attracting?
The middle class. So there are a lot of private schools that already target the high end and the wealthy, the super wealthy. And there are government schools out there that are okay. But the most important thing with a school is that you get in the right area. So, for example, in Broadacres, there's no government school. There's no affordable school option there. The nearest school is about 100,000 Rand a year in fees. Our school is 60 to 80,000 a year. So it's materially cheaper. And we're seeing already a lot of the parents or a lot of the families have moved from these expensive schools that are nearby to the more affordable schools in this brand new environment. Wealthy parents and middle-class families, because it just makes more sense. It's a better brand new environment. It's a progressive learning environment. It's nurturing and loving, and it's affordable.
And we have many listed companies now who've proven that this education is a business.
Yes, absolutely. But none have wrapped them in a 12J so that you get this wonderful business opportunity, this ability to change the world, and you get your tax back for it.
So returns, I'm going to ask the same question that I'm asking everyone. After 5 years, how much money am I looking at the total pot between receiver of revenue, dividends, capital repayment? What's that pot on 100,000 going to be worth?
It'll be about 212. So more than double your money back, definitely. Plus the underpin of the property to get that, like that risk-adjusted return even higher.
Jeff, this seems like a proper investment.
Yes, I think education there's a huge need for education in South Africa. I think physical and online. I think this is a nice little niche. And, I think, you compete, it's just another private school that's taking on the Kuros and the Advotech. So it's a nice little industry to get involved in. And, as long as that you probably you open them in areas where they're going to be well supported, I think it's a nice business model.
Thanks.
Fantastic. Peter, we're going to ask people after one more presentation to vote in these fantastically great niche areas where we're seeing amazing returns, lots of innovation taking place. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Which Jeff brings us on to probably one of our most creative new funds around, and that is a cannabis fund.
Yeah, that's a very interesting fund. It's also a fund that Grovis is involved in. It's something that I personally have identified a few years ago. But obviously, you need you need the operators, you need the champions, you need the management team to run these businesses. So good ideas are nothing. It's the execution is everything. And when this was offered for Grovis to get involved, we looked at who the team was, and not only have you got industry players like with Cliff and Pierre, but who actually in the industry and have been in the industry for a number of years and understand the industry. It's supported by a team as well of corporate financiers, entrepreneurs, guys who've got track records and who really understand business. This is a sunshine in sunset or early stage business,
sunrise
business. And, the same as when you get involved, whether it was cell phones or if it got in the internet, now battery operated cars. This is a sunrise industry, and it may have early mover advantage and a great team. So, I'm very bullish on this particular fund.
So Cliffy Gizano, turn on your camera. Let's talk about really an emerging new industry that's becoming big industry and big business all around the world.
Absolutely, Howie. And firstly, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. We don't have a fancy video yet because we're a brand new fund, but I can say that we'll soon get people flying high above these fields of green behind me. So I'm very excited to be with you here tonight, and I really want to plant a seed. And that seed being the message that green is the new gold. Our new Silverleaf investment fund, which we're actually launching tonight, it's a first of a kind, as Jeff said. It's a 12J venture capital company dedicated specifically to the cannabis industry. I'm personally invested a lot of time and money over the last few years building businesses in this space. And it's really starting to take off, as you were saying, even during COVID. Being on the ground and literally in the fields of green, I've access to a lot of investment opportunities which need funding. And when I looked around at the various funding options out there, it actually led me to come to chat to Jeff and Grovis guys. And I'm very grateful to have partnered with them and to have pulled together a fantastic team to bring this fund to market. So green really is the new gold, and it's the perfect time to get in. and to invest. South Africa is the perfect place to grow. And we believe that Silver Leaf is a great investment vehicle. So let me show you why. If I can just start the presentation. Okay, can you all see that?
Nope. Oh, now we can.
Great. Okay, so as Jeff was saying, it's very much a sunrise industry. It's one of the fastest growing industries, and it's legalizing globally very quickly. There's more than 40 countries that have legalized it, and it's now a legal industry. It's moved from cannabis being about high to being about health. And I firstly would like to acknowledge that many in our community are trying it for the first time, and some have been using it for health reasons for a while now, but under the radar. So everybody's got a cousin or a friend who's been getting it for them. It's almost like they're the drug healer, and it's bringing a lot of people relief. In fact, I got my mother off Valium. She now takes cannabis oil to sleep. I know of quite a few people that have used it for arthritis pain. I've seen kids with epilepsy that are getting relief. And I've got hundreds of other examples of how this plant is helping change people's lives. In fact, the World Health Organization as recently as December rescheduled cannabis from being a dangerous drug to actually having medical benefits. And in Israel, there was a professor 40 years ago who was working with the plant, and he discovered cannabinoids, which are an extract in the plant. And there's a lot of evidence-based research that's coming out that says that these cannabinoids are good for chronic conditions across the board. The plant now is actually being set free, and that's why we're so excited and why we're excited to launch this fund, because plant's coming out of jail. It's a miracle plant unlike anything else, and it's impacting on a lot of product categories and on a lot of industries. And when it's the hemp variant, and just to differentiate, the hemp variant is where the THC, or the psychoactive compound, is at low levels. It has a hell of a lot of application across these industries. So packaging, paper, pharmaceutical products, textiles. Levi's are making jeans and shirts. Adidas are making shoes from hemp. It's got a very, very wide, broad range of applications. And hemp is actually significantly changing the economies in some of these industries. South Africa is the perfect place to grow it. We could be a production house for this amazing plant. And the reason for this is because we've got great climate. We've got a long history with the plant. We've got what they call landrace strains that have been here for a long time. Cannabis loves Africa. We've got rand-based costs and dollar-based revenues because there's a big export opportunity because it's a global market. And we're respected, obviously, as an agricultural export country. The government is also very supportive. It was decriminalized in 2018, and it's in the process of being legalized. But as these industries legalize, we've seen in India, when they legalized hemp, 90,000 jobs were created in the first year. So this is very much talking to what we need now as a country, especially coming out of COVID with the job creation, because it touches on so many industries. In terms of the fund, we are a brand new fund, and our primary focus is going to be on cultivation. So we're talking to a number of companies in that space, because without plants in the ground, there's nothing really to work with. The plants then get processed and manufactured into products. We're also going to be focusing on the opposite end of the value chain, where there is already trade happening. There are stores out there. I've got stores in Johannesburg and in Cape Town selling CBD products, which are legal to sell. Channels being built, brands are being born, and brand leaders are starting to emerge. We're also looking at training.
We're going to stop you there because your time is up, although we are going to ask you one or two more questions. But okay. Most importantly, we've covered a number of different asset classes. We've covered rental classes, and we've done that with, in fact, Sunstone, with Infinity, with Rentsel, with Stars VCC, and with your fund on Silver Star. So I'm going to ask Danny to pull up a poll so people can show us interest now to make sure that people can actually get information from us, as well as Danny, if you could put something on YouTube as well so people can give us some indication if they would like us to contact them with any of these funds at all. But Cliff, while people are voting, just talk us through the legality at this point in time.
So Harry, it's a legal industry. licenses are being issued right now to farms to cultivate for medical use, and hemp is legal. Permits are also being issued to grow hemp, and that's going to touch on many industries. Adult recreational use is not legal yet in South Africa, but it's coming. And in fact, Mexico was just legalized, I think, a month or so ago, and it's really going to be the next big thing. Alcohol companies are getting in, tobacco companies are getting in, and are buying cannabis companies or buying into cannabis companies. So that's also our exit strategy long term, is possibly private equity sales. But it's a very, very exciting industry. It's changing the world, and we're keen to do good things in this industry once we raise the funds.
I just want to, I think correct something. In fact, recreational use is legal if you grow it yourself, but you can't trade in it or purchase it.
Correct. And in fact, that's why we started a trade association, of which I'm a founder, and we're lobbying government to open this industry up for trade, because right now you can grow it at home, but unless you were born on some kind of seed bank, or you had it growing in your garden or somebody dropped it there, where do you actually buy the seeds? And people can't trade in it. What about those who can't grow or don't have the space to grow? So it's an industry that desperately needs trade to be enabled, and it can be very lucrative, as we've seen in America and Canada.
Jeff, is this both a leisure and a financial investment?
Let's rather say that I think that it is an interesting sector that's going to develop. We've seen it started to become illegal throughout the world. I think in America, in certain countries, whatever, you're allowed to have the leisure part of it, very much so. In South Africa, not yet. I understand that legislation in time will allow it to happen, but while the fund, because it's a highly regulated and legislative vehicle, we must ensure that we obviously stick to the letter of the law. So they will be, growing the hemps and selling the CBDs, but keeping their eye out for opportunities as and when legislation changes.
So, Adrian, if you're still there behind your camera off, I want to just ask you to turn on, because we've had so many questions relating to Adrian. People are asking, will you only do complexes, or will you do individual homes or freestanding properties as well?
The problem is with a freestanding home that it's difficult to achieve economies of scale. So when we're doing a seasonal type of property, we can get down to maybe 65,000, 70,000 rand per household. When you're doing a standalone house, to get that same quality of life where you can run an oven, a geyser, full pump off the same system, you're looking at 300,000 rand. And I mean, it's 5-6 times the cost, and it becomes very unaffordable. You can't achieve that price for the cost replacement price point.
But if people have questions, they can certainly contact you. You'll give them answers. You'll give them answers.
Point them in the right direction. Introduce them to some people that specialize in looking at standalone properties to build them a system. Yeah, for sure.
So let's share some of the results, just so we can see what people are interested in. 25 people want to hear more from Sunstone Capital. Infinity Anchor Fund, 30 people want to hear more from. This is just of Zoom, not including the people on YouTube. 39 people are leads for you for Renzel. Stars Education, 29 people. The most that people are interested in, Cliffy, 45 or 43 people have in fact requested more information from you to hear about investing in the cannabis industry.
I think they're going to be asking for free product.
Everyone wants something for free. It's the story of our lives. And
if they want to get in touch with us, please take a look at the Silverleaf website, or send us an email at invest@silverleafinvestments.co.za.
What we're going to do, everyone who registered for tonight, and there are about 1,000 people who registered for tonight, we're sending them a spreadsheet with everyone's contact information, all the details, the returns, all the information that you filled out. We're going to email off to absolutely everyone, so they'll have access to that information.
Thank you.
So, Cliffy, Adrian, turn off your cameras. Jeff, this is such a confusing industry that it's sometimes impossible to make decisions of where you put your money. And that's where, in fact, Meta Capital comes into the picture. They make those hard decisions for you.
Absolutely right. And not only do they do the due diligence, they go to the whole universe of Section 12Js. They look at the dividends, they look at the history, they look at the management teams, they look at the potential exits. So they they really, and I know is that they really turn it over before they make an investment. And the good thing is that you get the portfolio effect. So if God forbid something does go pear-shaped, you have the portfolio effect that if there's 5 investments, you've got the benefit of 4 doing well.
So if Darren would turn on his camera. So Darren, Meta Capital, you would call it a fund of funds or a unit trust of Section 12J investments. You take all the hard work away from me and you actually make it easy by doing the due diligence, deciding where the money should actually go.
That's exactly right. The space has grown tremendously recently, and it's as a result that an aggregator needed to enter the market, and that's really where we have come forward as an aggregated offering to provide investors the comfort that they are adequately diversified across the spectrum of different 12J entities. And I'm just going to talk to that now, just through the introduction of our high income fund, which is our 4th portfolio of funds offering. And really, it's come across from the rapid growth in Section 12J. In 2017, we as Meta saw the need for an independent aggregator to enter the space, much like in the traditional listed and traditional asset class space where you have unit trusts, ETFs, etc., which has gained tremendous popularity amongst investors. Because of their diversity, their easy-to-use platform, etc., we saw the same transition that is required within this private asset class that has experienced such growth. So that is our value proposition, really set out into 2 distinct features. It is a pre-investment, post-investment offering or feature that's strenuous investment process at the beginning, where we, as Jeff Miller said, thoroughly DD funds to compile and weight market-leading portfolios. We then offer investors an opportunity to have an affordable diversification investment through a 350,000 Rand minimum, access to, in this particular case, 5 venture capital companies, diversified through fund manager, sector, and fund vintage. Our post-investment service offering allows us to provide market-leading quarterly reports to our investors and their representatives. And we have an experienced board of directors that facilitate not only the selection criteria and the selection of the funds, but also the ongoing due diligence and compliance, etc. And it's through this particular value proposition that we want to facilitate the new wave of Section 12J capital. We look to partner with some of the largest Tier 1 wealth managers in the country and have done so. Standard Bank Wealth and Investments, our largest partner to date, to bring forward Section 12J to a lot of investors through this affordable diversity. And importantly, we provide a very, very unique investor experience, allowing our investors to house and track all their investments in one place, giving a clear picture at all times of the performance of the portfolio, as well as the individual funds. Again, perfectly suited to the first-time 12J investor who's looking at different sectors, different asset classes, and now can monitor those throughout the year, and that can help assist them make their Section 12J investment decision in the next tax period. Our investment team, which give the gravitas to the product and to the business itself, is headed through our investment committee chairperson, Dr. Adrian Saville, who is the CEO of Cannon Asset Managers. We have Mark Teke, the CEO of Sereti Resources, now the biggest coal supplier to Eskom, Nick Dennis, the former CEO of Tiger Brands, and then Doug Smolin, a man who needs no introduction to this community, former chairman of the Smolin Group. And they form the backdrop of the team that not only selects the investments within our portfolio, but importantly monitors those investments on behalf of our investors going forward for 5 to 6 year investment term. In building the high income fund, we run a 4-month, 4-stage process where we take the entire VCC listing, this is our 4th investment process, and select a handful of funds that we believe are market leading according to our strict investment mandate. In this particular fund, a high weighting was provided to dividends, stable, predictable return profiles on the back of very strong asset underpins that have a very clear pathway to liquidity, meaning they can be realized in an existing market come the end of 5 years, providing that exit for investors wishing to exit day 1 of year 6. The next slide is really our portfolio. It's the composition and holdings. Basically how it will work is an investor acquires shares into each of these 5 entities, NESA, Gaia, Sunsun, Decentral, and Optimized, two of which you've heard tonight. And let's say 100,000 when we're to go into this particular fund, 25,000 goes to NESA, Gaia, etc. You mandate Meta Capital to collate all the supporting documents for you, represent you going forward, and therefore deal with the underlying fund managers, all at no additional cost to you. So if you were to invest into the fund yourself, into these 5 entities, or through our portfolio platform, the expense charge is identical. The sectoral diversity is key here. You are diversified across various sectors. Again, with that high dividend profile and asset underpin theme, renewable energy makes a large part of our portfolio, followed by agriculture and infrastructure, and then you've heard the likes of Optimized, Sunstone, etc. To really go into what this looks like on an investor return basis, we have an annual average dividend yield of 8% forecast for this particular fund. These are all entities that have been in the market for 3 years. As Jeff mentioned, we thoroughly DD their track record, their performance, their future investable pipeline, and this is the return profile an individual can expect from our portfolio of funds offering. Again, very importantly is that there is no additional expense charges. Deal platform for the first time, Section 12, specifically on the 50,000 Rand investment minimum now, which competes directly with your retirement annuity contribution that a lot of investors have made over the last few years. Some with disappointing results. Section 12J is now presenting itself as a really good alternative opportunity for investors who are traditionally comfortable with retirement annuity investing. And there's some significant advantages with Section 12J investments, specifically through a diversified offering such as ourselves, which will mimic a lot of the unit trusts, etc., that they are used to investing to in traditional asset classes. So really, to summarize for the investor who's waited until 10:30 to hear about a unique fund of funds offering, is that it provides investors with affordable diversity into a portfolio of market-leading investment strategies, hand-selected by our team at no additional cost to you, the investor, and is a partner with some of the largest wealth houses in the country.
So Danny, let's find out if people are really interested in getting some more information about a fund of funds, a unit trust that covers the entire market, or at least 5 funds within, so you don't have to go through all the details yourself. So we're going to put up on the screen, if you've missed anything, or if you haven't voted yet, if you're interested in tech and VC, or property and leisure, or asset rental, or energy, or schools, or cannabis, or fund of funds, let us know. We'll make sure that we get you all the information relating to that. And Danny, I trust you will also put this information up on YouTube so people can give us an indication on YouTube as well. Jeff, it's been an evening with so much information.
So, so the stock market too has many different sectors, and you now have, you as an investor has the opportunity to choose which sector and which share you want to invest in. Here now, the investor has the opportunity to decide which sector in Section 12J and then which fund it wishes to invest into. So this is, these alternative asset classes, I can tell you that over the last couple of years has outperformed the JC. If you take out the NASPAS and the process and those and the gold stocks of recent, that overall the 12J results have been far in excess of that of the JC returns. So, I think you've got different risk profiles, you've got different management teams, you've got different size funds, you've got new funds, you've got existing funds, you've got funds that declare dividends, you have some that just have growth capital. So I think, as you said, there's a lot of choices. So, and it means that the investor needs to say, where do I want to put my money? But it doesn't have to put all their money into one fund. The beauty is that you can, if you have won 500,000 Rand, you may invest in over a number of different strategies. So, and that's where Meta comes in, where they've actually done the work for you. Alternatively, you can be the investment committee yourself, and you can choose which of the funds that you want to actually invest into.
So in fact, Darren, I'm ending polling, and in fact, 30 people have asked for more information about the fund of fund. Another 9 want on cannabis, another 3 want on schools, 1 on energy, 2 on property, 3 on tech. But certainly a lot of people interested in making sure that you do the hard work for them and make the choices for them, so that they'll be able to have the best of your skills in making all those hard decisions.
Thanks, Howard. And knowing firsthand the stringent investment process we follow, we can assure you that this has been our 4th investment process. We have such a tremendous knowledge and wealth about the participants in Section 12J. Many of them we love here today. And yeah, have at the first time 12J investment a fantastic diversified approach so that you can go forward in your 12J investment cycle and press your own specific industry sectors and players that you wish to invest in going forward, specifically when they extend the sunset clause, which we're very hopeful that they will.
Thanks, Darren. Jeff, in order to make sense of all of this information, we're going to put everything down into a spreadsheet. I'm going to ask you to please vet it for us because we want to make sure that everyone's giving the exact same comparative information in terms of the return, in terms of what they've invested in. And you know this industry better than anyone else. But if you've registered for tonight's program, we're going to make sure that we mail all of that out, and we'll put in some work over the weekend, and by Monday we'll get out to everyone, and it will include their contact details. Jeff, hopefully we can include your contact details as well, because I think there are lots of people who need advice and information, and may come to you for some recommendations as well.
Only with pleasure. I think it's very important that one, you compare apples with apples and pears with pears, because otherwise one can get a skewed approach to the actual results.
So Danny, I see Aubrey's telling us that in the last poll, he wasn't able to select more than one option. So what I'm going to do, Danny, is ask you to just put your email address into the chat section. If anyone wants some more information or anything, let them mail Danny, he'll pass it on. And so Danny, if I can ask you just very quickly to type into the chat section at co@sajushreport.co.za, and we'll make sure that Danny is in fact contacts you and gets you all of the information we've required. Jeff, we've gone on for an awful long time tonight, 2.5 hours. It's exhausting.
Well, one thing I can say is that, albeit that you're not in this industry, you're fully versed, and whenever you want to come, and you're very qualified, and I'm very, very impressed that you know so much about Section 12J.
Well, thank you to everyone who's watched us this evening. Our apologies that it's gone on so long, but I think we had so much information to download. And most importantly, we've given you choice. We've given you 14 different funds that if you are in a position that you've got money to invest, if you do have a tax problem, it's a fantastic problem to have, because there's so many in our country who have no employment, no spare cash, no investable income. And if you're in the lucky position that you have, we certainly think that you can use that money constructively to create jobs in the country, to create an unbelievable return for yourself, and to make sure that our economy continues to grow. We'll be back with you again on Saturday evening, where we'll be going through and talking about COVID's mental marathon. So if you haven't yet registered for that, information will go out tomorrow morning. Danny, I don't know if you're going to put up that on the screen, but regardless, we'll leave the chat open for the next 5 minutes. Please tell us if you found tonight useful and informative for what you need out of a good tax-free investment for the year ahead. And we'll see you on Saturday night with something completely different as we go through COVID's mental marathon. Good night to all of you, and thank you so much for joining us this evening.
And Howard, I'd just like to, if I can, end by saying that it's a privilege to be part of this webinar and be able to sponsor it for the Jewish Report. And a big shout out to you and your team for the good work that you do for our community. And thanks very, very much.
Jeff, it's such a privilege to partner with you on bringing this information through to people. Thank you so much. Have a good night. We'll leave the chat open for another 5 minutes. We'll see you all on Saturday evening.